All right. Good evening, everybody. I'd like to bring the October 23rd Board of Selectmen's meeting to order. Just again, a reminder that we record these meetings for transparency and accurate minutes. The public meeting is being recorded on video and audio and will be posted on the town's website. We are also using an AI-assisted transcription tool to help draft the minutes. The approved written minutes remain the official record. If you speak, please state your name each time and speak clearly so everyone and the recording can hear. To stay up to date, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com at Town of New London. Okay, we're going to start off with our friends from the Pleasant Lake Protective Association to talk about the watershed plan.
Good evening. Doug Baxter, New London, representing Pleasant Lake Protective Association. We met with you on October 8th, I believe, at the meeting, and made a presentation on the Clean Waters Revolving Loan Fund that would help fund our watershed management plan. One thing we wanted to get back to the board on, and Rich asked the question about who would be responsible for this loan in the event that the plan was not completed. Since we met last, our board has met and voted unanimously that the Pleasant Lake Protective Association would guarantee this loan if for any reason that the plan was not completed on time. On that subject, thanks to John Wilson's efforts, he has learned a lot more about this Clean Waters loan process, and we've found that the 24-month term is what is suggested, but if for some extenuating circumstances, like if we had another pandemic or something of that nature, or vendors couldn't get jobs completed, a request to DES will give you 1-year incremental additions up to 5 years. That being said, FB Environmental, again, says every one of these they've ever done has been completed in 18 to 24 months, and they see no reason. But just to put your mind at ease, the PLPA would guarantee this. PLPA has also engaged FB Environmental to assist with the loan application process. They've done this numerous times for other lake associations. They really know the process, and they were highly recommended by other lake associations to us to assist with that process, the loan application process. John and I will be meeting with the Budget Committee on October 29th to introduce this proposal to them, and we are also meeting with Nick Bear, the Town Health Officer. But does the Select Board have any additional questions for us at this time?
Rich? No? Janet? No? Okay.
Thank you. We hope to have your support as well as that of the Budget Committee, and if all are in favor of us proceeding, we would hope to then start working on a warrant article for next year's town meeting.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Doug.
Just one quick request from you, John Wilson, PLPA. We're talking about a warrant article here, which is on the back side of these latest sheets. The question about PLPA's guaranteeing the loan, the question, should that be part of the warrant article or should it be a side agreement? I don't think you need to answer that right now, but since you were going to be potentially talking to your attorney about it, we want it where it's the most effective for the whole situation. So if you can...
We'll get some clarity on that, John.
Okay, thank you.
You got it.
Heard you over. Okay.
Thank you.
And Janet, we will talk with Nick, so. I'm sorry. We will talk with Nick Bear, too. Yep, okay. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you. Okay, next up, we have the Water Precinct Commissioners are here tonight. They have asked to be at our meeting to talk about, give us an update on what's going on with the wells after the study and some estimates that they have received. So I'll hand it over to you guys.
I'm Rip Cross, the chairman of the commission, and I've got Peter Hoagland and Ken Jakes as the other commissioners here tonight. As you all know, we've been challenged over at the precinct recently with a lot of demand, instantaneous demand for more water that the state of New Hampshire has told us we cannot provide. So we have undertaken some studies in response to all these requests, and we've had Emery and Garrett and Underwood engineers help us out. So I'd like to start here by reading the letter that we sent to the town, just to sort of set the stage here. Dear Selectmen, we're sending along this package prior to our meeting of October 23rd, 2025, with the intent of educating you as to where the New London Springfield Water System Precinct is in its ability to satisfy the apparent changing needs within the precinct, and what some of the challenges and opportunities are in that regard. The first document is the Emery and Garrett report that we commissioned in the fall of 2024, entitled Potential for Developing Additional Groundwater Groundwater Withdrawals at the Colby Point Wellfield. This work was executed during the winter of 2024 and the spring of 25. The report does indicate the possibility of gaining approximately 100,000 gallons of water per day. This is only the scientists' best guess based upon the data they mined and is not a guarantee. The second document is an outline proposal from Emery and Garrett to implement some of the recommendations outlined in their report. They have broken down the scope of the work into three tasks, or three main tasks that we should concentrate on over the next 3 years. Create a new well 4S, which is sort of on the top of the spine and over in one corner. Installation of replacement wells for LON 3 and 6, which are both on the top of the spine, which would increase the size of the casings. And then the installation of a bedrock test well. In addition to this work, they're recommending the installation of flow metering equipment on all 6 pumps and level gauges in all 6 wells. In conjunction with the Emery and Garrett work, we have outlined an outline proposal from Underwood engineers to perform their scope of work on the same 3 tasks as outlined in the Emery and Garrett report. This work is spelled out in the third attached document. We have summarized these proposals in one sheet to give you an idea of the order of magnitude of the work involved. The precinct has just completed the replacement of the main distribution line on Main Street at a cost of $5 million. We do not have the funds available to undertake the work in these proposals without significant support from the town of New London. We feel that the town should be involved in the development of new water sources to reflect the changes in the town. We look forward to discussing this with you. Respectfully, the Water Commissioners. To give everybody an idea of the order of magnitude, task 1 was the creation of a new well, which would be a replacement for one of the underperforming wells, and that's approximately $1.55 million. The rebuilding of the 2 other wells to recase them and install new equipment on that is $1.55 million. And then the third task, to create the new bedrock well, would be $1.1 million, and then the work to install the metering equipment to put in flow and flow meters and depth gauges in all the wells is about $900,000. So the sum total of this work is $5.1 million. And one thing that needs to be said is that this is not the sort of thing you just come up with $5.1 million and you get that water next week. It's probably at least a 3-year process going through the whole, we'd have to get firm engineering proposals, and then we'd have to have that approved by our voters, and then we'd have to raise the funds and permitting, and we've been reasonably assured that the renovation work would be considered renovations. Putting in a new well may or may not create a new permitting process. We're not sure about that yet. So that's kind of where we are. We thought we'd bring this to the town because, as I say, we can't do it alone. Our operating costs doubled this year with the taking on of the debt for the $5 million Main Street project. I'd also like to add to this, just in case anybody's interested, they did a leak detection analysis of our system this summer, and they found one house over on Barrett Road and that had a leaky toilet, and we found a hydrant with an issue which has been since fixed. So our loss from leaks is negligible. Ken would like to give a little history on the precinct.
He wouldn't like to, but he's going to. So I'm Ken Jakes, and I think I'd rather stand if that's okay. I just wanted to talk a little bit because there are a lot of new faces here and a lot of people that haven't been in town for a long time. And the precinct, so not most people won't know this, but 100 years this year.
Hey, Ken,
I'm sorry.
Ken, can you hold the microphone?
No, I'll sit down.
Thanks.
It's okay. That's fine.
You can stand.
No, that's fine. So the precinct's been providing water to the towns of New London and Springfield for 100 years this year, since 1925. And from 1925 up until the mid-'80s, the precinct operated with water source from the Morgan Pond watershed in Springfield. And in the '80s, things changed in New London, primarily. The college wanted to grow, the hospital wanted to grow, and the downtown district wanted to grow. And there was a group of people, and some of the names you'll recognize, that were commissioned to sit on I guess a fact-finding mission is what I'll call it, but they were just considered a water study commission. And some of them were commissioners at the time, and others were involved from the town of New London. And they were trying to determine what was the best path forward for the town and the precinct that made the most sense for everyone involved. And Morgan Pond watershed had a lot of limitations because very dependent upon weather. And if there was a summer like this summer, I can assure you, there would have been very little water to go around if we were still on the Morgan Pond watershed. So that being said, just so I read the names of who was in this commission, and some of them, like I said, you'll recognize. Vern Barrett, the Peter Bianchi, Johnny Clough, Brennan Jaggard, and Paul Lenahan. And these folks took the time to look at whether or not the precinct even wanted to continue being a precinct. Maybe they should dissolve the precinct. Maybe the precinct should no longer be responsible for the water. And with New London wanting to have these growth needs, maybe it would be better if the town of New London took over the precinct. See, I don't think a lot of people know that, but that was something that was looked at very carefully. And it would have involved divesting all of the assets of the precinct and dissolving the municipal function of the precinct. And then I don't know how it would have worked with the Springfield customers, whether they would have become a customer of the town of New London. But the short of it was that New London did not want to be in the water business. They didn't want to deal with having to have certified people to deal with quality and quantity issues, and it was determined that it would be better if the precinct continued as it was and worked on trying to solve the issues that were before it and the towns. And that being said, it was agreed that there would be a collaborative effort between the town of New London, town of Springfield, and the and the water precinct. Well, we're 40 years later into this, and we're kind of back at a similar crossroad. You have the town of New London wanting to have different types of projects in town, and you have, I was at the housing thing just 2 nights ago. There's some changes that want to be made that clearly would impact the precinct, and other ones outside the precinct would have their own sets of challenges. But I just think it's important that the precinct in the '80s, once they knew they had to look for different sources of water, there was the same situation we have now. There just weren't a lot of choices, or any really good choices. And to be fair, through the kindness of the Clevelands, we were able to develop the Colby Point well field, and it served the precinct well, and a lot of you have heard me say before, it was a finite amount of water. Everybody knew that going in, but it was the best option that we had available to us at the time. And you can see through some of the things that have been going on with the evaluation of what's in this area and what can you do with Colby Point, there's not a lot of choices that are great choices. And you know, the state frowns on surface water. That's an option. I don't know how popular that would be. I sincerely doubt it would be very popular, just based on what we went through to get Colby Point online. So the Safe Drinking Water Act kind of forced everybody's hand in the late 80s, where the state adopted the federal guidelines, and you had no choice if you were going to provide public water to adopt those guidelines. So the precinct did that, and it meant going away from Morgan Pond or doing some sort of treatment to Morgan Pond, but the state frowned on that because of the water capacity. There wasn't enough water. Why would you put all that money into infrastructure to treat something you don't have? And so Colby Point came along, we went in that direction. The precinct did the complete project on Colby Point, including the well field, the infrastructure, the pump station across the street from Colby Point, and a 1 million gallon storage tank 1 mile up in the woods in Springfield near the old reservoir sites. And along with that, it has put in a half a million gallon storage tank in the field up on the backside of Colby's library. So the field that runs behind all the homes you see and behind the Cleveland farm. It's a 500,000 gallon storage tank underground there. And that's there for two reasons. I mean, a lot of people think it's there just because we needed more water capacity in town should you have an emergency. Well, that's true, but the college was very involved in the conversations because the college did not have water pressure on the third stories of their new buildings. So without those pumps, they weren't going to be able to get fire flows that they needed and the fire protection to build those buildings. So that was a mutual agreement to, the precinct would take care of the tank and the infrastructure, and the college would be involved in helping us get the easement to put that on that property, which had a view easement on it already. And then we, as Rip said, we've done this water main, which was the trunk line more recently, but you know, South Pleasant Street was all redone not too long ago. Pine Hill was all redone not too long ago. And so there's, you know, a lot of money's been spent on the infrastructure of the precinct, and we've tried to maintain a debt level that we felt that the people in the precinct could afford. And so this trunk line on Main Street has changed that, as Rip said. You know, the tax rate has easily doubled, and, you know, we're saddled with that for 20 more years. And so with the, to reiterate what Rip said, with the changes that are coming down the line, anticipated changes from the Housing Commission's recommendations, which would mean changes in zoning, which would probably mean more density and more creative types of housing opportunities, some of those are probably going to end up being in the precinct. You know, there's already been a zoning change that's affected that with the density in the commercial zone, going from 10,000 square feet to 5,000 square feet. I mean, that's a lot of potential in the precinct. I think Adam estimated 180 units. So nobody's here begging for money, but the precinct has made its way and come to this point. And if you want to see larger projects come into town and have the flexibility to say, yeah, we'd like to have cottage courts or apartment buildings, condos, whatever it may be, there's going to have to be some changes made to the water system, clearly. There's just, the water's just not there for that. Certainly not to take on these large projects. And so, you know, we feel as a board that it's probably in the best interest. I think the town of London has to have a conversation amongst themselves as to whether or not, if that's the direction they're actually going, do they own any of the liability in trying to help the water system develop more sources? Or there are many communities that have developed a water source and then have had the precinct or village district manage that for them. You know, I think that's just the reality of where we are right now. you know, and it's not a great situation. I'm gonna be first to tell you that, and I've said it for a long time. We're not in a great place when it comes to having water. And if 100 years ago, the town of New London went 5 miles as the crow flies into Springfield to get water, there was a reason for that then. And I doubt it got better, and I know it did. So we just wanted to present that and make sure that everybody heard it in public, that that's the position that we're in right now. And, you know, I think if the mere fact that you live in the precinct doesn't mean that you are responsible for the wants of the people that live in the town of New London. And, you know, with the zoning change, that's what happens. So everybody gets to go on that Tuesday in March to vote for a referendum changes to the zoning that the planning board puts forward. And that's everybody in the town of New London. And so they check a box because the planning board recommends it, and then they go home to wherever they live. They have no dog in the fight, no skin in the game. And so it doesn't affect them. But a zoning change affects us a lot. And, you know, to ask the people that live in the precinct, I think is unreasonable to say, well, the town of New London wants this, but you need to solve this problem. I don't think that's fair. And, you know, I live in Springfield. That may have nothing to do with it, but I look at it from that perspective, and the people I know in Springfield look at it that way. I think it's going to take a cooperative effort to move forward on this. And either that or the precinct goes back to the time schedule that we were on, and, you know, we still have the ability, and we've talked with the state about it, you know, we can absorb the small amounts of growth that we've seen over the last decade, 15 years, but we can't absorb it all at once. And that's the difference here. And it's not a matter of not wanting to. If we had the water, we'd sign off tomorrow. But if we don't have it, you can't jeopardize everybody else to, you know, move forward with what people want. And that's just the reality of it. So, all right, so I'll keep quiet.
I just want to add one thing. This $5 million just sort of captures the low-hanging fruit potential out on Colby Point. Beyond that, the hydrologists say we're going to need another water source from some other place in town, and where that is expensive. I mean, you're talking $10, $20 million by the time. I mean, one of the places they like is an aquifer down by the Wilmot ball field, but to get that water here, you'd have to have 2 pump stations, and we just know that what we just did here, the piping is about $3 million a mile, so you can do the math on what it might take to get water here from there. So just another thing to think about.
And I'm not sure Wilmot would just welcome us with open arms. I don't know that, but, so that's kind of what we have, I'd say. And, you know, certainly willing to answer any questions. I don't know. I know you don't want to be here all night. You got a pretty busy agenda.
I have a couple of questions. So can you remind me what year the well field was put in place?
Came into service in 1995.
1995. So at that time, what did they, remind me what they said the life of those wells was going to be?
Well, nobody will project out past 30 years. The engineers wouldn't project out. And I think you have to remember, and we sat down, we had meetings with the realtors in town who seemed to have their thumb on what was going to happen as far as, you know, sales, influx of people into the community, was the population going to grow? Because nobody knew the answer to that. And the other big one was Debbie was just getting started with Osmond Sargent, so we wanted to know exactly what her plans were down the road, which would she envision maybe being encompassed under their group. And the 30-year number was the number that everybody felt comfortable with, that's what we would get for longevity out there. That being said, as the demand would grow, the field became less efficient because it draws out, you know, that takes
Yep.
fines in.
Yep.
So we've been very fortunate. You know, we're still pumping a large portion of what we were approved to pump out there. And, you know, and you heard me say some things happened in town that Osmond Sargent picked up a bunch of the development rights on a lot of big tracts of land.
Yep, middle school shut
Middle
down.
school decided to go to Sutton,
Yep,
and the town took over the sewer system. And got rid of the sewer commission. That really was huge, because when the rates changed, we could see it in the numbers, that the volume of water that was being utilized dropped a lot, and it just laid right in there with the rates going up. People were more cognizant of what they were using for water. And
so were there plans talked about to what's gonna happen at the end of 30 years with these wells?
there were,
Any money put aside in capital reserve?
there was no money put aside in capital reserves. I'm the first one to admit that. And the reason for that is we were trying to relinquish the debt that we had taken on to get Colby Point, this tank. You know, to give you an example, we no sooner get our head above water, and Jesse came in with the roundabout. It's gonna cost the town 10% of the total cost of the roundabout. I said, well, what about all the water mains? That's not covered in the grant. So there was another $650,000 that we didn't plan on, but the roundabout was going in no matter what. And you can be sure that we would have been digging up the roundabout to replace water mains if we hadn't done that work at that time. So,
Yep.
an unanticipated cost.
Okay, so no plans were sort of talked about for, at the end of the 30 years?
We discussed because we already knew what the options were, the options didn't change.
Right,
So it wasn't like, oh yeah, well, we're gonna go stick a pipe in Little Sunapee, put a treatment plant in. That was a poor option and was frowned upon. So you know, short of doing some sort of analysis in and around, like we more recently did, which yielded the same types of comments that we had had before. I mean, we had DLMR in there doing a lot of hydrogeological work way back in the 70s.
Yeah.
Late 70s, early 80s, because of the problems with Morgan Pond.
yeah,
So as we went along, we were able to provide water to whoever needed it
Yeah.
until we started seeing the large projects want water.
Yeah.
And then it became a more critical issue. But, you know, and you heard me say, when we went along for like 10 years,
Yeah.
providing 1 1/2 houses a year.
right.
That's, you know, 6 bedrooms a year. We're able to handle that.
Yeah. So all of Springfield doesn't pay for the water precinct, similar to New London, right? Only that section of Springfield that the villa is in and the houses there are the only ones that are paying?
It's the section of Springfield, right, the section
Yep.
of Springfield in and around Twin Lake Villa.
Okay,
Twin Lake Villa West, there's a few peripheral houses up in there.
okay. So I
You know
am,
why that is, though? Is that important to know?
sure, go ahead.
You can't get to New London without going through Twin Lake Villa with your water line.
Oh,
And you could imagine that a man who was trying to run a hotel
yeah,
might have said, having that potable water be some slick, because they were running their own water company at the time.
yeah,
And, you know, there was an easements were given and things were one way or another. And
Oh,
that's how that section of Springfield got into
Got
the
it.
original charter for the precinct.
okay.
So,
Okay, I am no scientist, but
neither am I.
I read through this report, and I've read through the options and the estimates. And I see 3 recommendations here that have to do with enlarging the diameters of the openings of the wells and the things like that, right? And
Those are the 2 wells on the topography. There's a low section and a high section.
Yep.
And the high section has got the higher producing wells, and there's 2 up there.
Yep.
I think if they take the casing size up to 18 inches,
Yeah,
it could dramatically increase the take. But the other thing we're not sure of is are these gonna draw water such that it robs
Robs Peter to pay Paul.
So
Yeah.
that's why more work's gotta be done, but
okay. So none of these estimates here given is for that type of work, is my
oh, yes,
question.
it is.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It is? That's
of
what,
it is, yeah.
I
Task
wasn't,
number 2 was that.
that's this work that's described, the enlarging of the.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
that was what.
So they would do testing as they started the enlargement process.
Yeah.
But there's still more engineering that has to be done before you just dive into that.
So we did the study, we had, what, $77,000 for the study that we did. They actually did borings and stuff up there last winter, and then with that additional information, then we came up with the rough draft engineering proposal from Emery and Garrett
Yep.
/ GZA to do that work, and then
Yep.
they're
And then-
just the hydrologist.
Right, then
we have to
Underwood
have
has to do-
Underwood in
Yep.
to actually engineer the wells and there's piping and equipment and so forth. But what we have now is we have a meter on the manifold of the pipe coming off the point, but we don't know what each well is
Right.
individually doing. We don't
Right.
know the levels. And, we were dropping in pressure this summer. We were down to be like 400 gallons a day was it. And we're like, what the hell's going on?
400,000
Yeah.
gallons.
What?
400,000 gallons.
400,000 gallons a day.
Yeah,
And we found two of the lower wells, they were only pumping like 7 gallons a minute. We had to replace 2 pumps and screen. They were original pumps, but, we replaced those 2 pumps and we gained almost 80,000 gallons.
Back to where we were.
We were
Yeah.
back to where we were. So
Yep.
the field was originally permitted for like 780,000 gallons a day, and right now it's doing about 500,000.
right. Okay, and they're saying in this report, after restoration, you could get an increase of current production of about 127,000 gallons or
Right,
something.
and that's a combination of doing the work in the wells and then putting in the instrumentation so that we can better understand the draw in each well.
Okay.
Because right now, we just kind of, we're not trying to work it too hard because we don't want to overdraw and.
Right.
So if we do increase the flows, it'll probably increase our maintenance costs, which is something that we got to factor into our budget.
And that's about $1.5 million to do that work.
That was, no, just to do the metering and such, that was about 900,000.
Okay,
The thing that's important there too, though, is that figure that they gave you, increase that amount of water.
yep,
If you put the new well in, you're probably gonna have to take a well offline, possibly.
yep.
So that's a
Yeah,
gross number,
It's a
not
fine
net.
tuning. I've heard you say, Ken, that publicly that there's some money left over from your $5 million bond that you took on this thing. Do you still, is there any money available?
There's gonna be some. We're not going to any casinos with it. There's gonna be some money left.
That might help.
The biggest, the 2 things that factored into this project that helped us a lot, state was very cooperative, was that we didn't have to go to the center line with the paving everywhere, only in a few places. And with the speed that SUR moved, the engineers didn't have to be on site as long. So there's some engineering money, and I say there's money, nothing is finished yet. We haven't signed off on anything. It's not till the end of November.
Okay,
In fact, we just gave they just did a walkthrough with SUR the other day, and they've got a list like this of stuff
They
that
got
they have
punch
to.
lists on a bunch of the pipe crossings they got to adjust, so.
And they got loaming and some sidewalk work, and they're not done yet. We still have their retention money, and we have not paid one of the 7 payments to them yet. So I don't know what that number's gonna be.
okay,
So there's gonna be a little bit of money left, and that'll go into the general fund.
yep,
Yeah. You want it to pay for the water, is that what you think?
yeah.
Ah, that's what I thought.
Okay, I'm done with my questions. Have you got any questions, Rich?
Ken, just a couple of questions. How many customers do you folks have in the town of New London?
So we have around 1,200 customers, and about 150 of that is commercial.
Okay. And how many do you have in Springfield?
Oh, let's see. Yeah, I think if you take collectively all of the buildings of the villa, along with the stuff in TLV West and the others, I'm gonna say it's probably around 30, somewhere in there.
In terms, you said 1,200 or so customers in the town of New London. What volume of the water that you folks are pumping is going to New London?
Going to New London,
Yeah.
almost all of it. I mean, you're saying how much water goes to
Yes.
Springfield? I can get you that exact number, but it's small compared to what New London uses.
And when you say small, just give me a ballpark, if you would.
I'll make a guess of 5% maybe goes to Springfield?
Okay. So the vast majority is going to New London.
Oh, yeah, no question. I mean, certainly the largest customer in Springfield is the Villa. And, that's 10 weeks a year. So that's a one-shot deal, you get to that for 10 weeks, high intensity, and then that's it. So, yeah. I can get you those numbers, Rich.
I just was looking for a ballpark, that's fine.
Yeah.
In terms of, you know, you said you're looking at roughly 5.1 million for this proposal with everything soup to nuts, somewhere in that ballpark?
That's what they had, that's what they
I mean,
recommended.
and that could be plus or minus 10, 20%. I mean, it's just back of the envelope type estimating at this point, just to give us a range to.
Because we asked them, could you give us some ideas?
Which is roughly what you folks bonded for the Main Street project?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. So what were you thinking in terms of what you would be looking for in terms of support from the town?
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with where is the town headed? I mean, if the town is going to move forward on, I think, on the zoning amendments that I listened to the other night, Tuesday night, and they are going to embrace large projects, because, you know, I mean, that's what I was told when we were first approached with these projects, is that this is what the town wants. Those were the words that came from Selectmen. So I think that if that's the case, then I would be very comfortable with the town helping us develop a water source and pay the majority of it and spread it throughout the entire town of New London. I think that that is a reasonable thing to do if that's what the town wants. But the town may say, we don't want that. So I just don't know. I'm not going to speak for them, but what I've seen more recently in the last 3-4 years is that's probably the direction things have headed. So I just think it's difficult to have the town vote for something and then expect the precinct to just absorb it and say, oh, that's great. Now what do we do?
And the $5 million for the Main Street project, that $5 million bond, is that borne strictly by the customers of the water precinct?
Yes.
No, that's not true.
okay.
It's a that is a capital expenditure. So it's borne by everybody who owns property in the precinct. So there are pieces of land in the precinct that are not developed, and you have people in the precinct who have a home, and for whatever reason, whether it be the developer, my son's one of them, he's in the water precinct, there's a water service to his house, he has a well. That's another whole story. And so there are some of those out there. But the capital costs have typically been absorbed by anyone who owns land in the precinct.
So not just a customer, but just by owning land in the
Right, but
precinct?
that being said, there's not a ton of that land
Right.
that is sitting out there where
That's
people are picking
not
up the
hooked
tab.
Well, there's also people in the precinct that there's no water line in front of their house because the developer never paid to put it in, but they're capable of getting the water if they put the water lines in.
Right. You know, like everything else, follow the money. If a developer chooses, it's no different than the town having a development go in years ago and the road's a dirt road. You know, why didn't you pave it? Well, the developer probably didn't think he'd get the money back out of the paving, so he didn't pave it. And if the town didn't require him to, he didn't pave it. And now everybody wants a paved road. We get the same problem in Springfield, so.
We've got nothing else, thank you.
Okay, I'm going to open this up to the public, because I'm sure there's some folks out here that would like to ask
Phoebe?
questions.
Janet hasn't had a chance to ask any questions.
I
I don't know if she has any, but
Thank you, Ashley. No, I don't. I assumed
go.
correctly. Okay. Sorry about that. Okay, so if anybody would like to stand up.
First thing, could they put the microphones in front of themselves?
Sure,
Sure.
sure.
You got two of them there, so you might share them.
We'll even turn them both on.
Okay. Do you want to speak, John? Yeah. Okay.
So the elephant in the room, I think he was just standing up behind me, actually, is the Twin Pines situation. And where my understanding is, and I'm willing to be persuaded differently, that they, in their test wells and so forth, they came up with a gusher, and that with a lot of water, and had it not been for the other test wells down at the Continuum thing, that they probably could have gone ahead because we wouldn't have known that the water was contaminated. My understanding also is that between Colby Point and, or actually between the cleaners and Twin Pines' proposed location, all the people there are on precinct water. I can't for the life of me understand why we're not doing test draws from that well, this gusher, because we could be sitting on one of the great solutions to at least our near problem. And maybe you can explain it more clearly, but it seems like we're potentially missing a big opportunity here. Thank you.
Are you asking whether the precinct should be testing that well?
I'm asking for just an explanation. I'm not asking you guys to be testing it. I just, you must know more about it than I do. I sure hope you do. And if the water is there, why can't we be drawing? I hear if you draw, you could be drawing the contaminants down into the aquifer and so forth. But the people in the near area aren't drawing from they're on municipal water, so I don't see what the problem is right there. And I'm just hoping that, because I see there's a lot of people here who are interested in Twin Pines, and I would just like to see an explanation, because I think you guys got your hand on more than certainly I do, and I'd like to understand it better. Thank you.
I think Andrew Winter probably could address that, but we're still in the midst of litigation between Twin Pines, so we can't really talk about all this publicly.
And with that introduction, thanks, Rip. Andrew Winter, Executive Director at Twin Pines. I thought it would be helpful for me to kind of come and talk a little bit about this topic. I will first address the question regarding the water at on the Crescenti property that we found, and sort of some of the limitations. So, it's bad luck, right? When you drill a well and you find that you've got water, and then you find out almost immediately that there's contamination across the street. And that was the situation that we were in last July. And the challenge is that to use those wells and to think about those wells, there is and I know the folks in the water precinct will appreciate this, there's a lot of hydrology that you need to understand and a lot of engineering that you need to understand, because there are fissures that run, in the bedrock that run from the general area of the contamination at the dry cleaners in the direction of the well field that we had installed. So that was one of those things where maybe somebody who wants to take a risk, and it's not somebody who does housing, it's not something that we're prepared to do, it's not something that our investors who invest, it's not something the state of New Hampshire, frankly, was all that eager, through the New Hampshire Housing, which provides our financing, was all that eager to undertake, because of the risk that you draw, even if things are fine for a year, 2 years, 5 years, down the road, you could be drawing contamination in that direction. And then you get all those intervening landowners who are upset, saying, well, you've been pulling this contamination in our direction, and now I'm getting PCE vapors in my basement or whatever, which is a real concern. Our offices are in White River. There's an active site there where people are trying to remediate those vapors. So there's a lot of risk that comes with it, and it's one that generally banks, investors don't want to take. So I hope that gives you a little bit of background on that question. I'm happy to meet with you afterwards and discuss it in more detail. I did want to talk a little bit about, and again, I'm not here to litigate. I'm not here to try to strike a grand bargain today with the precinct and the town. But I did want to share with you a letter that we did send to the precinct today, trying to move the ball, trying to be helpful, and knowing that the precinct has significant capital needs. And essentially, Twin Pines, and again, I've provided this letter to the precinct, I'm providing it to the select board members as well, but Twin Pines is prepared to offer $600,000 to be used for additional capacity and upgrades to the water system. We recognize that the precinct has concerns regarding capacity. We think we've made some progress around the demand numbers, thanks to conversations with the state. But again, what I'm offering is that we can, if the project moves forward, be in a position to make a significant one-time capital contribution, as well as a connection fee, which is not included in that number. But I believe it would be approaching $100,000 on a connection fee. So, again, those are significant additional capital infusions that could be brought to bear. The question is going to be timing, and the timing may not work. But, I wouldn't be doing my job, nor the precinct, if we didn't at least talk about it and think about it. Our project, even if we got a will-serve letter tomorrow, would not be in a position to break ground until next summer, and water would not be needed until the fall, likely the fall of 2027. So that gives us some time. Whether that's enough time, we can have that conversation. But I did want to make the boards, both boards, aware of our willingness to provide these one-time capital dollars to help with some of these significant costs, because we do recognize them. I did also share some of our cost estimating. Our numbers, and again, we have, we all have good engineers. Our engineers, looking at the information that Emery and Garrett did, came up with a lower number. We think that the 600,000 kind of provides a nice value in terms of what you can do with that. But again, look forward to having conversations, hopefully, with the precinct. So with that, I will thank you for letting me join you today, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Can I just respond to John quickly? I think from the precinct's perspective, John,
Go to the mic.
yeah, they're both on. Oh. I don't know. The difference between a municipal water source and a private water source is substantial. The radius in and around the wells is different. That's a fairly busy area up there. And as Andrew said, I don't think the state's been all warm about anybody diving into those wells. And there is an awful lot associated with trying to treat that type of contamination. And to hook that into a system that has very clean water and something goes wrong, risk is the four-letter word.
If Continuum hadn't been around, we would have taken the risk, right? We would never have known about the contamination.
They would have had to do a pump test on the wells, and depending upon their luck or not, whether it got that plume got drawn over at that time or not. I mean,
But we didn't know about the bloom until Continuum drilled.
Yeah.
No, they didn't know about it till they did the pump test.
Right, okay,
But anybody would have had to do that pump test to have a well of that capacity servicing anything.
yeah.
But the big thing that I'm concerned about is somebody somewhere in the state knew that there was that pollution there, and how we got this far down the road and it didn't come to bear, there's a problem.
Yeah, I was here when they admitted that, so, yeah. Okay, well, thank you.
Before we move on, Colin, do you mind if I just address a question to Andrew? Andrew, just wondering, I'm sorry if I missed this, but what's the source of the $600,000 that you folks are coming up with?
So we did not identify a specific source in our offer. There is a grant, as I know you are aware, that could potentially there was a grant that the town was eligible for because of the project, and if the project proceeds, then it would be available as a source. The town may choose not to use that 600,000. So we have actually applied for an additional grant. We'll know shortly. But if for some reason the town decides it doesn't want to use that 600,000, then we would replace those funds with other funds. But again, if the project doesn't proceed, my understanding is then the town essentially forfeits that $600,000. So I'm getting a nod from Ashley, so I will let the record show. The town manager nodded. So I think that's kind of one of the things for the select board potentially to consider as to whether or not. And again, I think in my letter, I try to make the point, if we can add capacity, it benefits all users. It's not just about the Twin Pines project. Obviously, there's an opportunity here. We need the housing. We've heard that from the employers. We've heard that from the hospital. We've heard that from the college. But we also want to make sure that we're going to have enough water for all the users. So the 600,000 could be potentially part of that solution. But again, that's, we'll have that conversation and see if we can, if that's has appeal to folks. But time does feel like it's of essence at this point.
So it is potentially, though, that you're thinking about that $600,000 grant as a potential source?
It could be. It doesn't have to be if for some reason the select board decides that it would prefer not to use it for that purpose. We just need to make sure that it's not lost. And so having the project move forward ensures that the grant is available. Thank you.
Colin Beasley. I want to bring it back to the bigger picture. I don't want to minimize the issue associated with Twin Pines, and I don't know what cost structure your engineers have created on this 5.1 million versus, you said it might have been less than theirs. But I think at the end of the day, the largest percent of the assets deployed for the precinct are in New London's territory. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. I think the town needs to fund engineering proposal, engineering work, flow control, and permits so we can understand the facts out of the well sites that are in place today. And I also think that the town, going back to what Ken talked about on that commission that existed a long time ago, we should probably commission a group of people that could look at the structural analysis for the precinct against the town. Ken's right, there are organizational models that would allow for the assets to be owned by the town and the precinct managing those assets on behalf of the town. But there's a whole gamut of spectrum, a whole spectrum of organizational models that we can play out. And we should think about that and think about how the town will evolve to address its water issues. I live on King Hill Road. I don't think I'll ever benefit directly from water to my house, but I think water in this town is a huge benefit, and I think we all benefit from it. So as one person, I would be willing to pay higher taxes to make sure that our water is consistently flowing to our existing sites, and that we have some group of people looking at what is necessary going forward to grow the community, because if we don't figure out a way to grow the community, there's only one way to deal with the revenue, right? That's, at this point, taxes. And if we don't figure out a way to grow the community, the growing cost structure is just going to increase the taxes of those who are living here. So I think we need to restructure, or think about how we restructure the water district, and think about how we get the funding so we can understand, at least in the near term, what we have to do. Thank you.
Thanks, Jean.
Jean, can you turn the mic on?
Oh, it goes green.
There you go. Thank you.
Yeah, Gene Weber, I live on Hall Farm Road, and thank you for an opportunity to meet with you. I'm disclaimer, I'm not an engineer, don't know a lot about this. I read these reports here, and new to town. Well, I've lived here 3 years now, so just learning. So I was going through the July report and the other report you had, or just came out with estimates this week, and the budgetary, and I kind of followed task 1 is like drilling that new well on 4S. Task 2, it sounds like from your answer to BB that it talks about replacement wells, but what you're really doing there is expanding the diameter of those existing wells. That's what's going on? So you got those 2 wells, you're gonna just make them bigger and replace a lot of the equipment so they can pump more water. Okay. I didn't follow task 3 though from the original report. Is that in there? And it calls it a test well, costs $100,000 to drill, but then there's like $1 million of other stuff going. Can you explain what's going on with task 3?
Yeah, that was to put in a bedrock well to, because the wells we have now are all in sand and gravel.
Right. They're shallow. They're like 50, 60 feet deep or something.
Correct. This would, bedrock, I think, is what, 100 and some odd feet down. I think that's what I recall. It would be to see if we could go down and put in a bedrock well, and to they have reason to believe there could be an aquifer down in the bedrock that we could get water from that is different than what we're getting it from through the sand filtration wells.
I see. Well, I got one of those in
It's
my yard
speculative,
now,
so it's the cost to drill that well.
Yeah, I got one of those in my yard now for my house because we're not in the precinct. But we go down 400 feet. I guess it's below the red bedrock. There's a whole system to clean it up, softeners and filters, and we got to do radon mitigation, all that kind of stuff. But I'm sure nothing like that because this is, on a big production level, right? But it's still going down to an aquifer below.
If there's an aquifer there.
So you don't know. But is the 127, what was it, 127 gallons a minute, or the big increase that you're expecting?
27,000 gallons a day was what
A day.
estimated.
Right.
Now, do you need task 3 to do that? Or does that just come from task 1 and 2?
No, that, 1 and 2.
One and two of doing 1 and 2 and then putting in the metering so we can better fine tune the water we're getting off the point now. Right now, there's just 1 meter that shows what we're drawing out of 6 wells. We don't know what we're individually getting out of 6.
Oh, yeah, I would agree that metering.
Well, that was a
very
cost
important.
savings.
You don't even know. You don't even know what's going on, right?
So
Yeah.
step back in time.
Yeah.
$2 million project in 1993, 94, 95.
Yeah.
Few cuts had to be made to make it fit into the square hole, the round number.
Right.
One of the things we cut was the flow meters on Colby Point, because the engineers said you could live without that. We also cut VFDs for the pumps in the vertical turbine pumps in the pump station. There just wasn't any money to do it. So.
No, I totally get it. So if we're thinking about what's proposed now, though, I'm wondering about task 3, can that get cut? I mean, it's $1 million, and I don't know that it's doing anything.
They don't have to all be done simultaneously. The recommendation from the engineers was to accomplish these tasks over the next 3 years.
So, and don't forget that the part that's in there is, and I'm sure it would probably go well.
Yeah.
But there's got to be some conversation with the property owners. We do not have an easement to develop more wells on Colby Point. We have an easement to maintain the existing well field. End of story. So there would have to be a conversation there too.
Okay.
That's with the Cleveland Corporation.
With the Cleveland. Yeah, so the thing I'm getting out of this discussion here, it sounds like there's a path forward. It's just, how do you pay for it? Does the water precinct pay for it through, bonding with their folks? Do we get funding from the township? Is that, am I missing something? But there's a path there to do what we need to do. It's just how you come up with the money. Would you agree, or am I missing something?
I think you're right. The problem is that if, again, it's a philosophical question as to who benefits from the entirety of it. And do you ask just the precinct people to pay for that?
And that has to be taken to a vote at our meeting, and if that gets voted down, then where are we?
You're nowhere. You're right where you are now.
Which meeting, which is the meeting?
We have a precinct meeting that is the week following the town meeting, where we would vote on an article to fund this engineering and/or the construction, and if that gets voted down, we're dead in the water. No pun
I
intended.
see, so there's like a meeting of members of the precinct or people in
Think
the
of it
precinct.
this way, the precinct is a municipality unto itself. Okay?
So it's an overlay of the New London and Springfield, right? You're saying the people
might say that,
involved.
yep.
Yeah, okay. Okay,
If you want, you could go down to the precinct during normal business hours, and we have a map on the wall, and you can see exactly the bounds of the precinct.
no, okay. And let me ask you, do you think if you took this $5 million project, 5.1 million, you went to competitive bid, do you think it would bring the overall cost down any? Do you think you get other players in there who could do it more?
These are
cheaply?
conceptual engineering and conceptual construction estimates. There is no engineering completed. This is just to give us an order of magnitude.
Okay,
There's no competition or anything in these numbers. This is just to give us a start to talk
just a
about.
budgetary rough
This
order
is
of
just trying to
magnitude.
figure out where we are in the
Yeah,
ballpark.
okay, all right. Okay, well, thank you, those are my questions.
Ken, you might tell the public who gets to vote at your meetings.
So at the precinct annual meeting, anybody who is a registered voter in New London or Springfield that lives in the water precinct, So you can't just own land and vote. It's just like owning land in New London and living in Woburn, Mass. You don't get to come up and vote. So you have to live in the precinct, and you have to be a registered voter in either New London or Springfield. Well, yeah, you could be a commercial owner. I'm a commercial owner. I get to vote. You do, yeah, you don't live in the precinct, but you own property in the precinct. I get that, and that's what I had just addressed. You have to live in the precinct. So it's not just the customers, it's anybody who lives in the precinct that is a registered voter in one or the other towns.
I have one more question.
And tell them about Colby Point passed by one vote.
Even to serve the existing customer base, do you see that you're going to have to make improvements, over the next 5 or 10 years? Or is the existing well system going to be sufficient for your current base for a long period of time?
Current base.
For how long?
No, current base, no growth?
Yes.
Yeah, you'd be fine for quite a while.
For how long?
I don't know how long. I mean,
So the report says it's been declining over 30 years, right? It's like
because the
less than
efficiency
half?
of the field has declined.
Right.
And we knew that going in, that would happen over time. Fines would be drawn into the well screens, and it would slowly diminish the amount of water that could be drawn into the well bores.
So do you expect that to continue, or?
Yeah,
Okay, so at some
we
point,
wanna
we're
go
gonna
in and
have trouble, though, right, or not?
say it again?
At some point, it's gonna continue to decline, and you're gonna reach whatever volume you need, so at some point, you'd have to do something, right, or?
Yeah, I doubt it's gonna be something you and I have to worry about.
You think it's way out there?
I think it's out there. I mean, but you're assuming no growth, and that's not a good assumption in looking at that.
Okay.
You're gonna always have some growth. And then depending on what goes on, that's one of the things we just talked about.
Just wondering about, planning for the future, and maybe something needs to be done anyway, right? Even if we don't have large expansive growth, there may need to be some ongoing maintenance or refurbishment of
But
the
we
field.
already do that. We're already doing that on a regular basis.
Maintenance, you're saying?
Maintenance on the well field, maintenance on the pumps, yes.
Okay.
So they're pulled and cleaned every 3 years for these 3, and then the next 3 the following year, and the vertical turbines are serviced after that. So it's a rotation.
Okay. All right, thank you very much.
We actually have scuba divers coming to clean the inside of the water tanks this year.
Okay. Any other questions from the audience, from the public? Okay. Okay.
Sorry it took so long. I knew it would.
So did we.
I know you got a lot on your plate.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Appreciate it. I appreciate it. We've got a lot to think about.
stay.
Oh, come on. Don't you want to hear about SB2? Okay.
All right, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
all. Thanks.
And for our community members that are here, all of the reports that the water commissioners mentioned this evening are available on our website.
We're going to put this up.
And the letter that Andrew from Twin Pines handed this evening, we will get that online as well.
Yeah.
Thanks, Andrew.
Thank you. Okay, we've got our SB2 committee here, our 3 members that are going to sit where you guys are sitting.
Yes, I think we're going to do a
Unless-
changing of the guards.
So we'll see how long this goes. I told Colin,
Any questions you have?
okay. Because I feel like this is the first of many conversations that we'll have, if you guys agree with me or not.
Really?
Maybe.
done.
Oh, you're done. Okay,
I thought I was done.
I have another commitment in my life.
okay.
Okay. I'm Colin Beasley.
Debbie Stanley.
Laura Davis?
We are your SB2 committee. We can take as long or as short as you wish. Our goal would be to, we're not going to attend to the backup. We're obviously ready to answer any questions on the backup, should anyone have gone through that. If you can, Ashley, if you could just flip to the next page, please. We addressed all these items that we talked about with you, I think it was 2 months ago that we were here, give or take. We would like to take questions from the select board as we go through the pages, if that's okay, and wait for questions from the audience until the end. I think it'll flow better that way. I think in effect, when you go through the deck, you'll see that we've sort of established a framework for both understanding what SB2 is and what it takes to implement it, should the vote agree to do so, okay? Excuse me. So if you can flip the page, Ashley, please. SB2 has been around for 30 years, and it was established by the state legislature with their concerns about modern lifestyles. You can read through the charts. I'm just going to babble a little bit. At the end of the day, there was concerns that the residents of the modern lifestyle were having trouble getting to the town meeting, so they wanted to leave open the option of going to the voter, the polls for that activity. Under SB2, there is a first session called the deliberative session. It's similar in many ways to the traditional town meeting. We have a chart about that, so you can see the differences and the similarities. Articles are still debated at the deliberative session as they are today at the town meeting. The difference is that you do not vote at the deliberative session. The second session is where you would actually vote. When you go to the polls today, you vote for whoever's running for whatever election and perhaps zoning changes. If you were to adopt SB2, you would also vote, excuse me, for the budget items that are being presented in the articles. Okay? Go ahead, Debbie.
This is actually one of my favorite charts. It's a 10-year history of the New London voting. And it indicates in the first column the number of registered voters. And then we have in the second column how many individuals usually attend the polls. And you'll see that people that vote at the polls, it varies to a high of close to about 30%. Sometimes it's lower, particularly during COVID. We only had about 10% of the voters actually voting at the polls. But going to town meeting is a lot less than the number of people going to the polls. And you'll see at a town meeting, a high of maybe 10% of the registered voters go. Sometimes it's lower, either 4, 5, or 6%. The last two columns have to do with a 60% bond. So how many people are actually voting on a bond? And what's happening is decisions are being made by a small number. Most recently, 8% of the actual voters, if they approved it, were voting for the bond. So that's one of the big things between SB2 and town meeting, who's voting and who's not. Could we go to the next slide, please? All right, this is a chart comparing traditional town meeting versus SB2 form of government. And I would like to call your attention to the comments that are in red. I don't know if you read those, but that indicates the changes. So regarding budget preparation, we did speak to the chair of the budget committee. Things start a little bit earlier, 3.5 to 4 weeks sooner than traditional town meeting for the budget committee. Also, at the same time, instead of a regular budget, there's something called a default budget that needs to be prepared as well. Regarding the deliberative session, that's usually in early February, and that's according to, it's prescribed by law. And then pretty much the rest of the items in the list are similar between SB2 and traditional. And Laura's going to speak next.
On the next slide, please. Thank you. So the biggest difference, I need to be taller. Can't do that. The biggest difference really is at the deliberative session. The articles cannot be taken out. They have to be left in for the polls. They can be amended, and actually, interestingly enough, they can actually be amended all the way down to $0, although I don't think that happens very often. But everything that is at the deliberative session will end up on the ballot that people vote for at the polls, which, of course, there is no specific traditional town meeting, but the deliberative session could be looked at as kind of a mini town meeting in the sense that all of the articles that will end up on the ballot can be discussed, and the public is invited and encouraged to be there because it is the one chance that everyone gets to voice their feeling about the budget that is being presented. The default budget is also being presented at that time. It's basically the budget of the current year, which is by law, it must be there in case the operating budget does not pass. Excuse me, I've got a little dry throat going on here. If we could go to the next page, please.
Actually, can I ask a question
Sure.
there? Okay, so my question would be, how would we educate the public about the fact that the only time they can amend articles is at the deliberative session? And in fact, you made a statement that they can be amended down to 0.
It is possible.
That almost happened in Croydon. Okay?
Yes.
So how do we, and we've seen this with the school district, where the school district is SB2, and we have a much larger budget in the school district, and we would go to the deliberative sessions and there would be hardly anybody there, except for this year. Prior to this year, hardly anybody there. And we would be in and out, and we'd all look at each other on the stage afterwards and say, oh my God, we just passed a $55 million budget and there's nobody here. So that's my question. Did you talk about that among yourselves? How do you make sure people know that it's so important for them to be there. Because a lot of people I hear just say, it doesn't matter if I go or not, I can't change anything, I'm just going to go vote.
I think that is the key to the issue, is making sure that the public does understand that they can make amendments and make those changes. So, for instance,
Yeah.
if, let's just say, there is an article that, I'm not even going to suggest a topic, but an article that requires, I don't know, $500,000. At the deliberative session, this will be explained, what the article is and why they feel, why the select board and the, perhaps the department that has requested the $500,000, why they need this. And then that does give the public the opportunity to say, we feel that this could come in at 400,000 instead of 500,000, and it needs to be looked at again. So we'll approve only 400,000. Or they could say, well, is 500,000 really enough? And they could amend up.
Yep.
So the key is letting the public know that this is their opportunity to voice their concerns and to amend articles. The article will then, as amended, go on the ballot.
So
Can I ask one more thing? So in the towns that you guys interviewed that have moved to SB2, did they talk about that issue of educating the public to get there when there should be there?
One of the, we'll talk about that in a future chart, but the short answer is yes. I mean, we have concluded that education, regardless of the form of government,
Yeah,
is critical and that we could do a better job.
correct.
And in some of the work that we did, some of the articles I read, for example, folks were lamenting that it's not enough even to go to deliberative session, right?
Yeah.
Because people will sit there and say, well, what's going on there? You really need to be involved in the budgeting process. Now, we all know, probably in many communities, but we know in this town, the amount of folks who are directly involved in the budgeting process, budget committee meetings, public hearings, are small, right? So folks either are trusting everyone's doing their job,
Yep.
or they're not worried about the outcome of that job,
Yeah,
or they don't care, or a lot of different reasons, right? But we have concluded, and you'll see it later on in the deck, that education is critical, and we got to do a better job of it.
agreed. But I would argue that the 8.7% of the people that are showing up and voting at the town meeting are the people that are talking to their neighbors. They're getting an idea of what people want, and they know their neighbor isn't going to show up at town meeting. So they've had those, they're an educated and informed group. I've also had people say to me, Bibi, I elected you, and I trust you to do this. I don't want to show up at all this stuff and go and vote. I trust you to do this. That's why I elected you. So that's just,
But
That's later in the deck.
yeah. in the same,
I'll stand back.
but the same process, the same conversation could happen at deliberative session, right? So whether it's a town meeting or deliberative session, it's the same thing.
The one thing I wanted to ask about is you said that the meeting cannot decide not to decide that all articles go to the ballot in some form. At our deliberative session for the school district in January, which as Bibi alluded to was reasonably well attended this year, we voted 92% to 7% against the petition warrant article, and it did not proceed to the ballot.
So I think, Richard, the school charter is different than the legislated or statutory charter for SB2. So it's materially different. So you have more flexibility, the school, has more flexibility with respect to how it presents its data and how it's voting for things than what the statutory SB2 is.
Well, now you tell me.
Yep. We learned a lot. I've been working on this since June. Yes. Didn't think it would take this much time. Can we go to the next slide? So that's Colin.
Okay, so the other item that we talked about, what would be the impacts on the responsibilities for folks? All the personnel with budget responsibility, it's department heads, budget committee, select board, The timeframe for budget preparation and presentations moved up about a month. Our analysis suggests there are 3 other functions that are impacted. The town clerk would be impacted with a possible increase in absentee ballots, a possible increase in the number of ballot pages. If you take a look at how other towns' ballots look who are SB2, they're longer than, because you've got all those articles they were voting for that I moved over. The finance director, Lynn, would be responsible for developing the default budget for the public hearing and the deliberative session. We believe the recent automation that was just adopted a couple years ago would help her in that activity. And obviously, Lynn would have to work with the select board or the budget committee, or I should say, to define what's in the operating budget versus what's in separate articles. There's a strategy here, and if we get to the point where we want it to be an SB2, how you present what's to be funded in your operating budget versus separate articles would be impactful. And so that conversation would play out between the finance director and the people responsible for the budgets. And then the checklist supervisors, obviously, they have to hold sessions to correct the checklist before both the deliberative session and the voting session, and there's a possible increase in their time for ballot counting. Okay? Continuing on to the next page. So we did look at other New Hampshire communities. Of the 221 New Hampshire towns, 33% of them are SB2. 3 changed to and then rescinded to the SB2 form of government, and they did that within 4 or 5 years of their adopting SB2. We reached out to 13 towns, and the detailed information is the backup. So the general themes that we gleaned from the other towns, there was some general concern about the budget development schedule, and is it accurate since it's a month early? But on the other side of that discussion was, the community participation with the budget should start at the budget committee meetings. So you shouldn't actually wait for the deliberative session. So there was some back and forth between, depending who you talked to and what you read by the other towns, as to whether or not the budget schedule issue was material. Meeting attendance, both sides basically believe that voter participation would be lower than at polls. So folks who were against SB2 would say the deliberative sessions don't have a lot of people going to the meetings. We looked at our own data, and obviously we don't see as many people going to the town meeting as goes to the voting polls. So we considered that issue of meeting attendance to be common to both issues. The voter experience, the traditional town meeting, there were folks who are concerned about the meeting length, the meeting time, the weather during those meetings. You have a lot of issues that contribute to less people attending the meetings, but the meeting length was a concern, and we actually saw that this year, right? People get up and they leave. That leaves even a lower percent of your voting public then available to make an impact on the rest of the community, right? The voter experience for the SB2 is the ballot length. And the election committee will talk about how long will the voter be in the voting booth, and we'll talk about that in a couple of charts, right? So that's an issue about the voter experience. Information availability and accuracy, we consider it an issue on both sides, and we think that we need to consider a mailer so that voters are more informed, and some towns are doing that. Debbie?
Can I ask one other
Please,
question?
yeah.
I noticed in the charts with the other towns that you all spoke to, that a lot of them listed reason for switching to SB2 as the possibility to control spending. So, did they find that that was the case or not?
I'll answer that one.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes. In particular, Deerfield is one of the communities, very conservative community. They have not passed the operating budget in a number of years, like 10 or 11. They go to a default. But it's the nature of the community. And it was their reason for adopting SB2. Another community is the town of Ware, also had the same concerns, and they have had a default budget for a number of years. both towns indicated that they have serious issues as far as their infrastructure because they've gone to a default budget. And they really don't know what they're going to be doing. They have a problem. So,
I'm just going to add quickly, Charlestown, which is fairly small, has voted for their budgets, and the only article that did not pass was a non-monetary one. So that is not true of every town.
okay.
Yep, go ahead.
This is me, okay. So, the next slide has to do with what we heard from the people that we interviewed that work for the town of New London. So, town clerk, moderator, assistant moderator, supervisor of the checklist, finance director, budget committee chair. We heard that they like the traditional town meeting, being one of the only community activities remaining. There was definitely a lot said about that. Some of the folks had heard about what had happened at Sunapee this past year, where they went to a default budget and its consequences. We did delve into that a little bit more, and it's our understanding the issue that happened in Sunapee really was a result of social media and one or two people in the community. So you have to be very careful where you get your news. It's very much what's going on right now in the country. There was concern about low attendance at the deliberative, but there's also low attendance at town meetings. We felt, and I think everybody felt, even the folks we interviewed, we need better voter information. And some of the towns call it a voter guide. It just needs to be available regardless of SB2 or traditional. Not everyone has email. Not everyone gets the notices from the town. I think you have like 1,000 addresses or so, but there's a lot more voters than that. So we really are recommending some kind of mailer as a source of getting information. We did discuss the possible cost impact of adopting SB2. And let me just, I guess I have to flip to the next slide. No?
No, you can. But before you do that, I think it's important. Will and I exchanged
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
some emails regarding the last bullet on the town personnel interviews. Will's thought is that if the town were to put an article on the warrant for an SB2, he proposed that we would follow that article in the same warrant with an article that would outline the costs associated with its first year implementation. And I think the word that's of confusion is in the very last sentence, this article would be proposed, should the SB2 article pass, it would really be presented. So you can picture a town meeting saying no to SB2, then you would pass over the SB2 implementation funding article. If the town voted yes to an SB2, then the town would address the next article that would be how to fund it for the implementation. I just want to make sure that it was clarified.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So is that, I can't see.
Yep, that's it. No, next.
Okay.
Wait, no.
I'm sorry, I should go back one slide, please.
Okay.
I thought we missed one.
So if it was voted by the voters, it would take effect the following year, the next cycle. You need to recognize, we all need to recognize that there would be a learning curve for those involved. You need to become familiar with SB2 requirements and adjust your schedule. Everything moves up by a good month. Again, we've already mentioned this, you need a default budget. The election committee would need to account for possible longer voting times per voter because the ballot would be longer. And we're pretty sure that it would likely increase absentee ballot requests, so a lot more. I think what Will told us was that
about 500.
during an election year, there's as many as 2,000 absentee ballots
In November.
in November.
And March
In
one-
A
November.
presidential election. right?
And
Yeah.
who knows what would happen in this town with so many people, heading south,
In March, I think Will said about 500 was
Yeah.
the high point in the March
so.
elections.
And so we did want to mention possible cost impacts of adopting SB2. The ballot length would mean increased printing costs, ballot processing. And I've already mentioned the time for the ballot. There was something about feeding the ballots into the machine and being tested and how long that would take. So the voting process would take longer, definitely. People would have to be patient. And really, you think there'd be more signs for or against outside indicating how you should vote. So I think that was the last comment. So Laura's going to speak to the next two. Or actually, three, the next three, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, citizen comments. Obviously, you've had time to read this, so I'm not going to read to you, but the most common comments that we heard from, well, the first one was people who didn't even know that SB2 existed. And we didn't really write that one down, but that was kind of an interesting one, and I have to say, because I taught in Sunapee, I guess I was more familiar with SB2 than I would have been had I just been in New London for my work. So that was the first thing. And explaining to people what SB2 was, then we got the reactions, some of which are here. And the most common one was, well, town meeting is traditional. And that's true. And I too enjoy tradition, however, that was a concern for some people. Other people felt that we had moved past tradition and that there were so many big-ticket items that every voter deserved the opportunity to vote on those big-ticket items, whether they could make it to a town meeting or not. I'm not sure if I pulled anything else out from the first couple pages. One comment was that SB2 better supports democracy. Okay, that was an opinion. We did have, in the other pages at the end, there are also comments from people in other towns who are SB2 towns. The comments in these 3 pages are just New London citizens and people who vote in the SB2 towns. In general, the ones that I spoke with were very much in favor of it. The town clerks that I spoke to said it worked very well in their towns. Newport in particular said that they send out a voter guide with explanations of all of the warrant articles so that people are aware what is on the warrant, why it was arrived as it was, for amount and reasoning, and this goes out before the deliberative session. One thing that we were concerned about, and that many citizens in SB2 towns mentioned, and it is definitely a concern, is that the deliberative sessions do seem to have less people going to them. And that is certainly a concern, and I think if we were to adopt SB2, it would be something we would definitely want to educate people to, that it's important to be part of that process, not just go to the polls.
All set?
I think so.
Okay. Ashley, if you go to the pros and cons, a couple forward. Thank you. So the pros and cons are sort of 2 sides of the same coin. The town meeting, people who are pro SB2, town meeting is not well attended. The belief is that the minority of voters can control the town actions. Weather and evening hours pose additional complications. Against SB2, town meetings is a tradition, and deliberative sessions are not well attended. Of course, we have seen Croydon, the school, and actually ourselves with the police issue, that when you have a contentious issue, volumes of people go up, right? So I think that goes to the importance of educating people. Excuse me. For pro SB2, voting at the polls, participation clearly is higher. The data shows that. It gets broader public input, including absentee ballots, which obviously are not available at a town meeting. Voters have the opportunity for debate and education at the deliberative session. Because they vote later, they have an opportunity to educate. We have an opportunity, and everyone has an opportunity to educate each other between the deliberative session and the voting period. What Debbie had referred to before, that's where you have to really recognize the importance of information and not let misinformation or disinformation control what the population is seeing. The opposite side of that, obviously, is folks who are against SB2 believe that interval between the deliberative session and the poll day is an opportunity for greater misinformation. So, and they also have concerns about the size of the ballot, and some people just may vote their pocketbook. For example, some people will say, if they're uneducated, they go in and they see cost and just say no, 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 no. So education is going to be really important. And we saw some of that in the towns that we interviewed. If you flip the page, Ashley, please. We also talked about what other governance changes the town might consider. Some of the stuff that we observed and talked about, one was including the estimated tax rate impact of each article in the warrant. We saw some voter guides and some actual ballots that was pretty cool. You actually know exactly what the tax impact is. So it increases a lot of transparency. It's outlined in the RSA. A lot of this material is statutorily defined. It's very technical. How you word your articles are all statutorily defined. There's very little leeway on how you play out the operating budget, the default budget, and all that activity. So, and then the other item that we talked about is adopting 5 as a number of select board members versus the current 3. So of the sample we looked at, only 2 had 3 SB members, 3 select board members. So, why that's the case, why we have 3 and other towns have 5. We just noticed that as a trend, so we put it on the piece of paper. Okay? It might be something the town might want to discuss. Debbie? You're up.
Next steps, and the committee wanted me to go over all of them. You might have read them, but they wanted me to go over them and reinforce it. First thing, if you decide to move ahead, it's your decision, but the first thing really is to determine the best way to educate the citizens of New London about SB2. Then you also need to determine whether it's the budget committee should present the default budget. The history of New London is that the budget committee does the budget, but it could be the selectmen with the default. You need to decide that, and there's information how to accomplish that with a different article, because you actually have to vote on that when you do go vote. So the third thing is prepare one or both articles for the warrant, and we've indicated where you go for that information. So if you decide that you want to put SB2 down, the local governing body must hold a public hearing at least 15 days prior to the question being voted on. And there's specific wording. It will require a 3/5 majority vote okay? And for the default budget responsibility, if you would like it to be the Budget Committee, the question can be put before the voters on the warrant for the annual meeting after a public hearing is held on the question. Again, it's required wording, and the passage requires 3/5 vote. Okay, item number 4. And you might want to jump in on this one, Colin. About a separate article to address additional costs can be placed on the warrant. Right?
This goes to the comment that I made about my exchange with Will. So if the select board chose to put a warrant on the article for SB2, they could choose to follow Will's recommendation and follow that article with a separate article to address the incremental cost associated with implementing SB2. And we showed you what those costs were. Obviously, the ballot size is probably going to be the most material. The others are all about time and volunteer time, and I don't know how we would cost that out, but that would play out.
Should I mention the cost of living one is separate too? No?
What do you mean?
No, never mind.
Okay.
Okay, item number 5, address whether the town should include a tax impact on all the articles.
And that's something that's totally separate, right? Not related to SB2.
Yeah.
That's a separate thing.
We used to have that too, on
You
all
have-
of our
you have
articles years ago.
Do you have examples of that? Can you
Yeah,
send?
we used to do it. I don't know why it stopped. And address whether the town should increase the select board size. That has to be voted on as well. And the final thing is, regardless if you want to go ahead or not, address how you can get information out to people, and there's samples of voter guides. So those are our 7 suggestions.
I know, Will, I remember having a conversation with Kim last year, that you and she had that conversation many times of how we can get together a voting guide and get it sent out. So any samples you have would be appreciated. Yeah, it's just money, yeah.
Actually, Will says he has some voter guide samples in his office.
Okay.
But I can send you some too.
Okay.
So Laura's up next, I think.
Yes.
We're basically at the end here. The backup documents go from page 20 to the end. And if anyone is interested, the very last page, page 28, I believe it is, has the links to the state of New Hampshire information about SB2. And I don't have that page with me, I don't think. Oh, yes, I do. It has the Revenue Department's traditional town meeting schedules for 2025, obviously not for 2026 quite yet, but it will be coming out. The Department of Revenue technical assistance for SB2, the forms of town government that exist in New Hampshire, and a meeting from the town of Hopkinton. All of those are right there for anyone who would like to get additional information from the authorities as it is. And again, I think the most important thing that we feel came out of all of our research is that education piece. No matter what happens, whether it's SB2 or traditional town meeting, we as a town desperately, desperately need to make sure our voters are educated with the correct and accurate information about what's going on. And I know that's a tough, tough assignment.
Janet or Rich, do you have any other questions?
Just thank you for all of your effort. I think it's really just terrific, and when you talk about education, this is part of that education, frankly.
Yep.
And so, so thank you for giving us so much to think about.
Okay. what I was going to say is, we're hoping the election folks would like to respond to this. They weren't prepared to do that tonight. I'd like to see if we could put that on our next meeting's agenda to allow them to respond. Would people mind if we held off on public comments tonight? Or if anybody's really dying to say something, I'll let you, only because we still have a lot of stuff to do. But if somebody's really dying to comment, go ahead, Charlie.
Charlie Kelsey, resident and chair of the Budget Committee, had the opportunity to meet with the committee, talk through a lot of these topics, and have done some thinking and discussion with others. What I didn't hear more completely that I think would be helpful, for me certainly, maybe for others, is the effect on the town or towns that you spoke with of what appears to be a tendency to immediately go to a default budget. If you go into a default budget, what does that actually create in terms of dynamic within the town? Because it seems to me, as we look forward several years, immediate and into the several years, we've got some very significant budget challenges and investment opportunities, if you want to look at it that way as well. And it's fairly easy when you step back from that and are not engaged to look at the impact of those items on a tax rate and immediately say, I'm going to vote no. I'm going to vote no. I'm going to vote no, which then gets us to the position of having to deal with a default budget. And I understand there are parameters around default budgets. But did you, in your conversations with these towns, get a sense of how did it change the community dynamic among community members? How did it change the dynamic, if at all, within the town administration itself and the departments that work within the town?
So I know that Debbie's anxious to talk, but I want to put some context in. It's really important to identify what the operating budget is and the default budget. When you look at the town ballots that are SB2, the preponderance of articles are not within the operating budget. They're outside of the operating budget. And for those towns that I looked at that had operating budgets that were denied, most everything else was approved. So that's why I said earlier it's important to think through what would be in the operating budget. The default budget is last year's budget, statutorily defined, with pluses and minuses in it.
Right.
So that's the default budget. So what you put in the operating budget and what you put outside of the operating budget provides the town with flexibility on how you would structure, how you would go about communicating to the town what's playing out. So that communication is going to be really important. I just want to put that context in place.
Needed.
Right, and then I'll let...
You know, it really varies. New London is lucky with its tax rate. It's really lower than the two communities I mentioned before. I mean, Ware is much higher. And that's why they go with the default. It has been very difficult. The nature of Deerfield, where Charlie used to live, is just conservative, totally conservative. And that's what the town administrator told me. And they'll just, everything is always default. Yet, the town of Lee has always passed their budget. And I think it's the nature of the community, perhaps better educated. A lot of people work at UNH. It really depends upon the politics of the community, how it turns out.
I would also quickly add that of the 72 or 3 towns which have adopted SB2, only 3 have rescinded it. So the others have worked with both past budgets that people did vote for and default budgets. And we only contacted 13 towns. And at that, we worked quite a bit to do that. I think contacting all 70 some odd would have been difficult. But I think it really does depend some on a lot on the community. And I don't think the preponderance of voting has been for default budgets. In several of the towns, as I said, Charlestown, for example, it was only a non-monetary. The only one that did not pass in the last year was non-monetary. So many of the budgets do pass.
I just want to add on the town of Deerfield, which is generally default. The one thing that they do is they have a separate article indicating if they end up with a default budget, they will allow, they generally approve a cost of living adjustment for the employees. So they take care of the town employees with the cost of living in a separate article if they go with a default.
And that serves as the example I talked about, right? If you would put cost of living in the operating budget, you can't then separate it as a separate article. So there's some thought process to go through. What should the operating budget be that you're presenting? What do you want to pull out of the operating budget? Again, you've got to follow the law, but what do you pull out of the operating budget so that you can make available to the community a decision process to do other things, right?
Sorry, just to clarify, when he's talking about cost of living, he means staff salaries, so town employee salaries and the cost of living adjustment that happens there.
Thank you all. I really appreciate it.
Phone calls.
Okay, moving along. All right, we're gonna, so this is the public comment section. If there's anybody that wants to make a public comment on anything that is not on our agenda, this is the time to do so. Seeing none, we will move on to feedback on the proposed budget. So, would one of,
Yes.
go ahead.
Lynn has Questica up. I think what the plan here is, and Lynn, you chime in, is as you guys provide thoughts, comments, feedback, adjustments, she will try to make those in real time in Questica. And then when we are done here tonight, we will get the budget over to the budget committee.
Emphasis on try.
Yes.
This is the first time I'm trying to do this live with you guys, so
Yeah.
we'll see what happens.
Lynn, do you want to start with a couple of the changes that you've made since our last time we've looked at this?
Sure. So we had put in the budget a 15% increase for health insurances, and that actually came in at 16.7, I believe the number was. So I did make those adjustments through each of the departments. We also received our insurance bill, well, not the bills, but what it's going to cost us for 2027 from Primex. Our liability, property liability and auto went down by about $8,000. Our workers' comp, which I had included at a 10% increase, because that's the cap, the most that they could increase it, went up. So the net difference, I think the budget went up by about $1,800 based on the insurances that went up. So I'm working with that number now with you guys. We put in your mailbox is the new summary. So the new budget with those few little changes came to the grand total of $13,918,696. And then I did also break out, and you'll see it after you guys make all your changes. I will reprint the budget worksheet. I broke out the dispatch study from discretionary, so that's a separate line item now.
Okay. All right. Do either of you have any recommendations on where to start? I would like to start with capital reserves, but if you guys, one of you wants to. All right. So I shared with both of you my thoughts on the capital reserve transfers in. I think you both have the list. My thought is for town building maintenance increased to 400,000. Computer maintenance, the same. Energy projects, the same. ETF employee buyout, the same. Fire vehicle fund dropped to 200,000. Fire breathing apparatus, FD radio, communications, police equipment all stay the same. Sidewalks decreased to 50,000. Conservation land acquisition, I have it coming out, and we can discuss that because where this is Rich's first year, he might want to hear where I think both Janet and I stand on the conservation land acquisition. But having said that, I know that they are considering making a donation to Osmond Sargent towards the purchase of the Oler property, so I would be okay with replacing whatever the amount is that they're considering, which I think is somewhere around $25,000. Everything else keep the same, but I wanted to add, like I mentioned in our last meeting, the idea of the town clock, capital reserve fund, and put $1,000 in there. And then I thought perhaps it might be time to start a capital, it's past time, but it might be time now to start a capital reserve for the police communication new facility building and putting $100,000 in that account. So that ending balance was 1.185 million. And then the only difference in transfers out I had was postponing the purchase of the truck for the fire department, 77,000, and moving that to the next fiscal year. So those were my ideas. So Janet, if you want to go first, if you have any other thoughts.
I guess with regard to the communications equipment, it seems to me that perhaps we should wait until we have done the study for dispatch, rather than putting $100,000 into that fund. I think we should wait on that. And I think with regard to sidewalks, Sam has indicated that he can do a lot of the work, and perhaps we could reduce that amount by $25,000.
Oh, my recommendation was reducing it by 50. From 100 to 50.
Oh, okay.
It was 100, I think.
Oh, okay. Well, I didn't see what that's fine. Yeah, I agree with that. Okay, good.
All right.
And that was the two things that I might, and also,
Oh, go ahead.
I wanted to say that I don't think we need to replace whatever conservation donates to Osmond Sargent, because we still have money in the HADAD fund if they were to come up with something that they needed. But I think in the future, we should let organizations that can do fundraising do that, and then not have conservation have, what is it, $300,000 or $400,000 in their account already?
470, I think.
Yeah, I mean, that it's just sitting there, so I don't think that we should, we need to donate anything to that one.
Right, and just to add to that, if they did find a piece of land that they wanted to purchase, it has to go to town meeting anyway,
Exactly.
so they need just enough to down payment and hold the
Right.
contract.
Which they probably have. Okay.
Chief Cobb isn't here at the moment, so I would like to hear her thought on your idea of waiting. Yeah. And why don't you go, Rich, and then we can ask department heads if they want to ask anything.
You know, I'm comfortable with the different things that you've just mentioned. You know, I generally like the idea of capital reserve funds and making sure that they're very well funded. Again, the dilemma this year is, you know, we're looking right now approximately a budget with a 10% increase, which is kind of similar to what we've been doing as a general rule. And, you know, I've made clear to folks that's, to my mind, just not sustainable. But when it comes to capital reserve funds, you know, again, generally I'm going to be a fan of them because I like the idea of setting money aside. The one thing I did want to ask is one thing I'm going to be looking to add into the budget is I've mentioned to folks, you know, my concerns primarily having to do with Bunker Road and the properties along there and the potential for somebody to put a vehicle into Pleasant Lake. And I didn't know whether or not funding potential barriers along there would be in the current operating budget or whether it would be more appropriate to put it into a capital reserve fund.
Sam's not here either, is, and we don't have an idea of how much that's gonna cost.
No, but that's where, my hope was that we could, begin with something like $50,000 so that at least we could begin work, and again, this is all just, in a certain sense, theoretical. But at least the problem we've already run into this year is that, for example, just doing an analysis of what we need for the public works site is problematic in terms of coming up with funding for that, and so, I'd like to have money available so that if it does make sense, we can move forward with it. But that would be a big if.
It's hard when we don't know how much it's gonna cost.
That-
But I agree, I think maybe you have that conversation with Sam, and then come back.
Yeah, I can do that.
Yeah.
I can do that.
Would you agree?
Yes, but I also want to say, and I know we keep throwing this fund out there, but we could always use the transportation and regional, what is it called? The Municipal and Regional Transportation Improvement Fund. That may be a use of that money. But I know we keep saying, well, that could be used for this and that could be used for that. So we have to come up with a comprehensive list of what we think can come out of there.
Yeah.
But, I mean, that's constantly being funded at about $8,000 to $9,000 a quarter into that account, and that comes from everybody's registrations. Your $5 added to your registration goes into that account.
And how much do we have in that fund right now again?
We have $118,000 right now.
Do we have anything else that people are earmarking that money for?
There's been a lot of things thrown out. Oh, we could always do that from this, and we could always do that from this. But I don't know if anybody has really landed on anything
Yeah,
yet.
there's nothing planned.
So
Yeah. And just to give you an idea, I mentioned that I did have a conversation with someone that I know who's an engineer working on highway projects. And his comment was that generally with that high tension guardrail system that he was mentioning to me, he said as a ballpark number, you could assume $100 per foot for that.
Okay.
Do you want to ask Chief Cobb?
Yes, Chief, if you don't mind. Janet is making the suggestion of asking the question if the communications equipment purchased the $350,000 for the replacement, is there any way that can be postponed a year in light of us doing the dispatch study this year, and then we wouldn't have to put $100,000 in this year?
Well, the equipment is at end of life. It was purchased in 2015. It's 2025 right now. I'd probably have to have a much deeper conversation with our vendor to see what the actual lifespan of that is, and if it would be possible or a good idea to put that off. So I could have that conversation and come back to you if you'd like.
Okay. We've just heard about 30-year wells that, are at end of life, but okay.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you. If you could come back to us, that would be great. Are you okay with that? Yeah. Okay. All right. So, no decisions made at the moment, because we have a couple of other things to... Chief Lyon, would you like to address my request that the purchase of the truck be postponed a year?
Absolutely. As far as the fire department apparatus replacement fund, it was great. Our finance director reached out to the department heads. My recommendation was $300,000. The reason for that is we're due to replace our ladder truck in 6 years at estimated cost of 1.8, which would be $300,000 a year. We still have several years of our lease-to-own payment on engine 2. We had to come up with creative financing because we were short with not putting some monies aside, and then the increases unexpected with the whole COVID aspect of things. With regards to the vehicle, no different than Chief Cobb. It's a 2015. We typically keep our vehicles for 10 years. An interesting thing, if you take your vehicle hours, if you so have it, multiply that by 30, it gives you your actual mileage. So my vehicle right now, if I do that with 1,184 hours, I'm right around that 34,000 mile mark on my pickup truck. And lo and behold, it's 34,000 miles. If you take that with our municipal vehicles that are idling at scenes or whatever the case may be, it's right around 220,000 miles. With that being said, it again is a support vehicle that we use for day-to-day operations, for inspections, trainings. Certainly, I think we would be more inclined to defer the purchase, especially if the capital reserve gets cut down to $200,000 from the $250 that Lynn had put in. So,
Yeah.
Long answer short.
Yep.
If
Would
it's
you-
another year, if it's a transmission comes up or something like that, then so be it. We'd be
Well,
more
even
inclined
so-
to focus on person.
Even so, the money's there, so if you needed to purchase it before.
It actually won't be, because we're fairly low. I mean,
I've got it at, it would, if we only do 200, I've got the balance, even with the $132,000 payment, I've got it at 80,754. So there would be enough there if you needed it. And then we'd increase the next year's.
okay. I just talked to Lynn and her,
Okay.
but
All right.
it's all good.
Okay. Okay, so we have to come back to that. All right, I'm gonna, I guess, start with you. Are there any other areas of the budget that you'd like to talk about? No. Rich, you're up.
When you say other areas of the budget,
Well,
it's beyond the capital reserves, you're saying?
beyond the capital reserves, we're gonna start, I guess, looking into changes in the budget that should be considered.
As I mentioned before, we're looking right now at a 10% increase in the budget, in the operating budget, along with the capital outlays. What concerns me again is just that, and I don't want to be repetitive, but these numbers just are not sustainable. And so what I'm looking to have a conversation about is any place where we can reduce some of these increases. I do remain of the opinion, with all due respect to all of the members of our fire department who are here, that it is premature to be hiring additional personnel at this time without first trying to, say, increase, for example, the per diem amounts. When we talk about an increase of $200,000 over the course, in order to hire 2 more full-time firefighters, that works out to, again, around numbers about $4,000 a week. That kind of money would provide a substantial amount for higher per diem amounts. My understanding is that we pay $180 at this time. Is that correct, Chief? $180 for a Saturday and $180 for a Sunday, for example? And I know we're having trouble getting folks willing to sign up, for example, for weekend shifts. It's basic economics that if we were to raise that amount, some amount, people would be more inclined to sign up for it. If we were to, for example, bump that up to, say, $300 for a Saturday and $300 for a Sunday, that's an example where for an additional $240 per weekend, we might get a better response rate. Maybe we wouldn't, and maybe we'd have to go even higher. But what I'm suggesting is that there might be interim steps that we could take in terms of increasing per diem amounts, for example, in order to try and get us a better response rate, but something short of just hiring more personnel full-time. Because once we do that, essentially, with few exceptions, once we hire people, it's a permanent thing. And so certainly that's one area where I'm strongly of the opinion that it is appropriate to try interim steps before we go with a full-time additional firefighter. In addition, when we talk about, for example, the library, as I understand it, is proposing a 5.5% increase for wages overall between COLA and the step increase. My concern there again is that that's not keeping in line with what the Consumer Price Index is saying, which right now is looking at roughly a 2.5% to 3.5% increase over the next 12 months. No one knows what those numbers are ultimately going to be, but that's what I'm reading as the projections. And so these are some of the areas that, I'm just eager to see us try and pull back on the reins on some of these things, because it fundamentally, several people have said to me, well, if we do these things, it's going to require some hard choices. That's exactly correct. It is going to require some hard choices. And I wish we were in a position to fund everything that everybody wanted in every circumstance, but we cannot continue with 10% budget increases every year. That is just not sustainable, and that's certainly not what the average American is seeing in terms of his or her salary increasing on an annual basis. I don't know many people who are seeing increases of in excess of 10% per year for their wages. So those are just a few of my thoughts that I'll throw out there for your consideration.
Richard, do you want to speak to the staff increases for coal?
My understanding, and we'll have more information tomorrow when, more information is let out, but what I have been reading is that we're set to look at an annual of 3.1% starting tomorrow being reported. So I'm certainly fine to look at, different reportings of those numbers, but that's really what I've been going off of.
Yeah. Okay.
As I said, what I'm reading says 2.5% to 3.5%. Unfortunately, with tariffs, et cetera, that is all extremely difficult for us to project at this point, and God only knows where we're going to be in terms of actual, inflation a year from now. But I tend to put both the STEP and the COLA together. I'm looking at the overall increase, and my understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is that the library is looking at a 5.5% wage increase.
Sure, it would be, again, the 3% COLA, which, we do every year based on the consumer price index, and then the 2.5% step increase that we, alongside all departments for New London, do for our staff. So that's where we're getting those numbers from.
Right, and that's just it. Is for me, it's this combination of a step along with a COLA, which is giving us, again, numbers that I just don't think are sustainable.
And that's fair. Thank you.
So when I first came on the select board too, I was surprised to see the step increase plus the COLA as well, because they don't do that in the school district. But also in the school district, you're dealing with a union. The teachers are in a union. We don't have any unions in the town. I would still want to support the 2.5% step increase plus the COLA increase this year. I'd like to take the year to look at that again and tying things, perhaps, so that we're not having this conversation every single year. I'd like to take the year for us to come up with a policy that sticks, and whether it be that it's a sort of a guarantee, a minimum and a maximum, those kinds of things. I'd like to talk about that over the next year. And maybe it goes out the window and we stay with what we're doing. But for this year, I only think it's fair to the employees that we stick with what we have done historically. And if you want to address anything, and then I want to go back to the fire.
Initially, when we started the step increases, when we did a comprehensive employee compensation study, it was determined that our salaries were not in line with what was going on with the rest of the community and other towns that are of similar size. And we felt that we had to make a change, and that's why we instituted the step increases. And we've stuck with that, and I think at least since 2018, because we really weren't competitive with other towns, and we were finding that it was an issue with hiring staff for especially police and fire. So I'm just throwing that out there, giving you a little historical perspective.
I appreciate that. I just, if someone can tell me how we're going to knock these numbers, then, as I said, when we're looking at 10% right now, how we're going to potentially knock them down, I'm all ears.
you know, I think everybody is dealing with increases like this that are out of our control because of the fact that 70% of our budget is staff and benefits, and the health insurance premiums keep going up, and the state keeps pulling more and more money away from the municipalities. So I'd love to be able to figure out how to take this down by 10%, but it continues with these pressures that are not in our control. So I want to go back to the fire department. I have thought long and hard about this. I've spent a lot of time with Jay talking it through, and I would like to see us put a pause on adding this. Well, I want to put it this way. I agree with the plan. I agree with the thoughtfulness that you've put into it, in that we have to do something different with the fire department because the levels of volunteerism have declined, and you're struggling so much to find on-call folks. This year we funded that position and it's not filled, right? It's not filled. Well, right, currently, agreed. So I'm thinking that we take a step back and look at the program and make sure, and I know you want to offer these jobs to people that are going to be great for our fire department. You want to be competitive, right? I feel like there's some things that need to be worked out with regards to scheduling and benefits and things like that. And there's also going to be some changes in the fire department this upcoming year, right, with staffing. So I'd like to take a pause on funding this additional position so that we can take this year to really get your benefits put together, your scheduling put together, and really look at some really great candidates and fill the positions that you have funded in the budget already. And I like Rich's idea of increasing that amount for on-call on the weekends. And I'm getting some head shakes against it over there. Let's have the conversation, for sure. So anyway, those are my thoughts. I think that's all I have to say.
I appreciate your thoughts.
Or
not
my
appreciate
fellow
it,
select
depending on
board
what
members,
happens next.
Or we do fund it, put it in there, but, you know, we're going to be particular about the structure and the scheduling and those kinds of things when you go to fill these positions. So those are my thoughts, if the two of you want to jump in.
Do you want to add anything, Janet, and then I'll...
No, not right now. I think, obviously, I understand, attending your fire wards meetings, how important it is to hire more personnel to alleviate some of the overtime and the stress that the current staff is dealing with. But since my initial support of hiring another person beyond the one we haven't hired yet, we have experienced some very difficult scenarios within the town regarding cost. And I think we have to be cognizant of the fact that we have to deal with public works buildings, and we still need to deal with a new police facility. So I think I agree with BB, perhaps we should pause for a year, see how it works out when you hopefully find someone else to fill the current position that has been funded. And you have not heard the ultimate decision on the SAFER grant, is that correct?
There's something like federal shutdown right now, so they haven't really announced much in the last 3 weeks. To sort of go back, so we had an unanticipated transition from an individual from the New London Fire Department to Laconia. That individual was a single health care plan. We had a conditional offer to another subject. The issue was that individual had a family plan. We can't, because of the tightness in our budget, we couldn't absorb that into our operating budget or even staffing, so the delay in hiring was so that we could afford someone that actually had, so we could afford that individual. Subsequently, there were some changes in that individual's particular fire department, and also looking at personnel policy aspect of things, that he made the decision to decline that. We currently have a meeting set up this coming Monday with a potential candidate which checks a lot of our boxes, from experience, succession planning for when Captain Matthew retires. There's a plethora of things that I think would be beneficial for the hiring of this individual. And I understand that it is a difficult time. My concern that, well, I jotted some stuff down. You know, I tend to be a little ADHD or something, squirrel. So when I was reflecting at the changes that lie ahead of all of us, especially over the past months preparing the budget, I found myself wondering, how did I let the staffing deficiencies of this department get to this point, especially after 25 years of going from the fire department toning everything to a on-call system, to the utilization of highway department. Out of our 926 calls last year, we were able to minimize the number of general alarms. One of the items that came up in our Board of Fire Wards minutes or meeting the other day was, what if we just went to general alarms for all our calls and didn't necessarily worry about the on-call officer system, since it's a challenge, and that would cost the town approximately $350,000 just in call pay alone, not including Rich's really remarkable recommendation for increased pay, which I'm assuming that some of us probably shook our head. That's probably not the answer, but I'm only assuming, and I apologize for having my back to you. But you all read my staffing report. Knowing that this board would be taking up this vote of non-support as we continue our efforts to adequately staff the New London Fire Department, a department that plays such a critical role in our community and safety of our residents, has weighed heavily on me. I wish I could have the energy to deliver a fiery and passionate speech like Al Pacino in A Scent of a Woman, where I smash the stage and yell. If I was half the man I used to be, I'd take a flamethrower to this place. But the truth is, at this point in my career, I'm tired, and honestly, I don't think it would change certainly the needle in any way at this point. Lately, I've heard comments that our staffing plan is a knee-jerk reaction, or that if we reduce services or non-emergency calls to our residents, somehow we won't need an additional firefighter. The truth is, we've known this day is coming. And for at least the last 7, 8, 9 years, we've looked at the trends, we've planned ahead for them. We believe that it was more responsible to have a phased-in approach in order to hire full-time firefighters over a period of time. So as you alluded to, Bibi, as I transition out of the New London Fire Department into retirement this coming spring, I have just one request of this board. Please remember that this wonderful town and its greatest assets are not its buildings, is not the budget, is not our equipment. It's our people. There's never a good time to spend money, but there's a right time to spend money. So thank you.
Thank you, Jay. And this is going to be a conversation not only with the fire department, but with the dispatch services. New London residents are used to getting certain services from all of our employees, and that costs money. 70% of our budget is paying for those services, for these really wonderful employees that we have in this town, and our residents depend on those services. So it's a conversation that we're going to be having. Do we want our firefighters responding to as many of the calls that they respond to? That's what, and if the people in town want those services, then they'll be willing to pay for them.
So I think it's also important, and I hear you loudly and clearly, that I am currently in the process of breaking down every single call from time of day, as far as after hours, to what the duty crew handles Monday through Friday. And it's interesting as far as the public assist aspect, the residential unlocks. Last evening, I was called for a beeping smoke detector. After hours, I went to the individual's home. He had his home remodeled. The smoke detector that he had would have been more beneficial just placed in a closet. It was totally ineffective because of the construction of the home. The question is, do we not go to a beeping smoke detector? Do we not provide the services that people, and looking through, there's things like filling up the ice skating rink. There was an individual at Hilltop that couldn't control or had an issue with their gas stove. That was a service call that we went to, where the gas was blowing out of the supply line, including the fireplace, and the individual couldn't shut it off. So I've got a whole series. I can provide those to you. It takes some time for me to go through because I've got a whole spreadsheet, but it is not a rampant residential unlocks. Yes, we had a cat in the tree the other day. That's, again, 1 in 3 years. What I can do is I can certainly come up with a list of all those calls. Those calls are not what we're talking about, not the deficiency. Those aren't the calls that our officers are going, oh my God, I can't believe that we're responding to those. Those calls we've actually stopped going to. For instance, dart landings. When Ashley's uncle was the deputy chief, we used to go to every single dart landing at New London Hospital. We don't go to those any longer. It's a designated LZ. They have staffing. Do we go periodically? Absolutely, if requested. If they don't have sufficient staffing, time and night, whatever the case may be. Those were 2 calls last year out of our 926 calls. So I think the perception of us going to these random acts of kindness just isn't there. And again, I'll break down all the calls. I've got them listed by incident number. I can have time of day. It's really interesting to me because I haven't done necessarily a deep dive into those. So it's, again, it's not the calls that we're dealing with. And certainly when you look in comparable towns, I hate to say the Sunapee Fire Department, we went mutual aid to. They had 2 firefighters show up,
I read that.
right?
Yeah.
2 firefighters show up.
Yeah, it's a problem.
And it's a problem everywhere.
It's not only a problem in New London, it's a problem in
Yeah,
all of
yeah,
our
yeah,
towns.
and so I think that regionalization would make sense. The problem is, if we do a regional service, what that's going to mean is more and more full-time firefighters in New London. Now, we may get compensation from those other communities, but no different than New London Hospital. We are going to hire more and more people. We are not going to get the revenues that offset the cost of a full-time firefighter. And so they need to hire. The difference with the fire service too, like you could say, okay, let's disband the police department. We can contract with the sheriff's department. You could have state police that you could contract with, and obviously our size, there's limitations there. That just doesn't make sense for us, especially where I've advocated in the past passionately about a 24-hour police department. We need that because a police officer, for instance, when there was that crash, that fiery crash on Little Sunapee Road near the Twin Lake Villa Boat House, Our police department was able to get there and actually remove a subject from a burning car. Those are the advantages of having people here at the station. It's not just general response, it's level of certification, level of training. I'm also looking at ambulance calls, and all of our full-time firefighters are EMT trained. Not all our firefighters are EMT trained. I'd love to have them. That's not the case. We are providing a higher level of service based upon the credentialing, based upon the experience, than a general firefighter would be able to give to the town. And so I do struggle having this conversation with respect to staffing levels, knowing the complexity, knowing that we're competing against each other for all intents and purposes, right? The highway department, the police department, highway and fire, or the water department and the fire department. Like there's set funds that we have. But again, we're looking at stuff internally, like, does the firefighter, so we're not competing against other agencies that have definite needs, whether it be the police, whether it be the new DPW building. Does the Firefighters Association raise the money to put the ladder truck in so that we're not competing against other departments? And what's going to happen is, I'm going to be transitioning out. How are department heads going to work as a cohesive group, knowing that we're competing against each other for limited funds? And that's horrible.
Well, I actually think all the department heads are working together.
Oh, absolutely. We work together extremely well.
Yeah.
But my point being,
Yeah.
moving forward with the water department with $5 million, the DPW, the police department, it's as to Rich's point, it's difficult. My main goal is to make sure that we're providing the best services possible to our taxpayers. It's a safety issue. It's not a want, it is a true need. It's your job to make the decision one way or the other. And maybe if the select board is conflicted, maybe it goes on a warrant article instead of putting that position into the general operating funds for the fire department. Maybe it's a separate warrant article. And have the taxpayers make the determination, yes, no, maybe so.
I was going to say, this part of the budget can very easily be amended at town meeting as well. Someone could stand up and say, I want to add, but a warrant article is another good idea. Yep.
And I appreciate your acknowledgement that the staffing levels are needed.
Yep.
I appreciate that. Yep. The difficult thing is, how do we divvy up the funds to adequately staff our true needs?
I agree. Okay, so I guess the three of us need to decide if we're going to leave this other staff member in this budget for now or take it out and, oh, sorry. Oh, yeah, go ahead. We need you there.
Steve Ensign, Chief Fire Ward. You made a comment about our not being able to fill the new position. That's the wrong interpretation. We filled the new position. Brandon's right here.
Right.
What we're filling now is an individual who left us, who was a full-time, and went to a different community for other reasons.
Fair.
So we're in the normal process of filling a position that existed. We filled the new position.
Fair. Thank you, Steve.
Can I expand on something real quick, too?
Yeah, go ahead. Any of you who wants to, please.
There you go. Mike Matthew, Captain. So just to expand on what the chief had talked about and Steve talked about, we have 35 members of the department right now. Of those 35, we have 5 EMTs, I believe, that are licensed. I think Tom's an EMT too. We forgot him. So we have 5. Out of those 35, we have 17 certified firefighters. Basically, even like you're talking about, Rich, as far as the per diem on the weekends, it's not going to matter. Because those call officers, the per diem officers, cannot touch the EMS equipment. So what happens when they go on a call, they have to leave the equipment at the station because they're not licensed. Per the state of New Hampshire, they have to be licensed to touch the equipment, which they cannot. So whether, you pay them $500 an hour or whatever, it's not going to matter as far as the weekends are concerned. I just want to let you know that because that's what's important to us is the level of care.
Say that one more time. 17 of the 35.
17 of the
licensed
35 of
firefighters.
us are certified firefighters.
Yep.
5 of us, 3 of them right here in this room right now are
Yep.
licensed EMTs.
Yep.
For the state of New Hampshire, you cannot touch this equipment unless you're licensed.
A licensed,
EMT or an advanced EMT like Brandon is, correct.
but the ambulance drivers are all licensed EMTs.
They are, they're paramedics. But the problem is, if they're out of town, which they are more and more now, we're responding. So if you have a per diem,
Yeah.
absolutely, yeah,
Anybody
let
who
Brandon
wants
come up
to
because
speak,
he's an advanced, he can expand more on the medical part of it than I can.
Yeah.
Brandon Adams, balsa makers, also the fire department. So I came prepared to speak about this a little bit. Speaking to what Mike's talking about, I came from working for a couple of different full-time, fully staffed fire departments. Coming here has been eye-opening for me. A little shocking. Some of the like the idea we've got a bunch of people that want to show up and want to help, but you could have 20 people show up to a fire and none of them are certified firefighters. On the subject that I'm probably even more passionate about, since I've been here, since I've been here full time, I've been on, I believe, 5 medical calls where New London EMS ambulances were already on calls. So we had to call for a mutual aid ambulance. One of those was a 6-year-old boy who was having an anaphylactic reaction. The person that we had, so this is the problem with the suggestion to throwing money at getting people to want to be on call for the weekends. The person that we had on call for the weekend was not an EMT. So Newport's ambulance was requested to come in. It was like a 25-minute wait for them. And the person that we're sending, the one person that's supposed to go there and intervene, is not a medical provider. So, not to get too much into the weeds on that, but general people don't know this stuff because it's not what they do. Anaphylaxis can kill anybody quickly. It's one of the, in the EMS, so I worked on an ambulance before I came here, along with being a firefighter. So it's something among EMS providers that we say to each other, this is when you can actually save a life. When you're on an ambulance and you're going to an anaphylaxis call, this is one of those calls where you have to intervene or the person is going to die. So, requires, the state protocol for my level requires epinephrine as soon as possible, and then every 5 minutes from that point on. If you're waiting 25 minutes for an ambulance, you could be giving round after round of epinephrine while you're waiting. And then, beyond that, if the person declines, now you're going into the rest of your bag of tricks that you need to do to try to save that person. So that's one call. I just have a few examples because I don't think the people know that this is the kind of stuff that we're going to and that we're sending people to, and they can't help. So I personally went to a stroke call a couple weeks ago
We had to call Franklin's ambulance in mutual aid, 20 minutes until they got there, 25 minutes, I'm sorry. Because it was me, because it happened to be me, I was able to intervene. I was able to do an EKG, take vitals, start an IV, so when the ambulance got there, they could just go and get them to the hospital. If it's somebody else, you're not going to get that. Unfortunately, recently we had an elderly person get run over by a car in town. We had 3 people at the station. They went to help now this is not a mutual aid situation. The ambulance needs 10 people there to help them. We sent 3 people. None of them were EMS certified. They're going to do the best they can, but the ambulance needs someone there that can help them. Those are the reasons why you can give people $1,000, but the town needs people to show up that can do the job that they need them to do. So that's it.
Thank you, Brenda.
So I do feel obligated to respond. I have never for a moment suggested that this wouldn't make it a better fire department, that funding more people would make it a stronger department. Absolutely. It's one of these situations in which we do have to make a call in terms of how many people can we afford. We are never going to be able to afford a perfect fire department. We will never have exactly as many people as we need, unfortunately. I'd love it if we could give you a department with 30 full-time firefighters and a whole bunch of EMTs. But the dilemma for us, and that's where, to be very clear, I have never for a moment doubted. I absolutely understand this would make it a stronger department. But I did have one person say to me, this can't be about money. And the unfortunate reality is when we're talking about a budget, of course it's about money. It's always about money. Every single decision we're making here about a budget is about money. And so to be very clear, I don't doubt for a moment the sincerity of everybody who's spoken, and I don't doubt the examples that you're giving. It's just a decision we have to make whether or not we can afford to continue to upgrade the number of personnel that we have, et cetera, et cetera. And it's a judgment. It's like 10 firefighters would be better than 6, 20 would be even better, 40 would be terrific.
So just to answer that question, you're saying, can you afford a firefighter? My answer to you is, can you afford not? We're not talking a staffing of 10 per shift. We're not talking a staffing of 2 per shift. We're talking a person, a certified person, 24 hours a day. And even with a crew of 4 individuals working 24 hours a day, there's still vacation time. We need more. This is at a minimum. And so we would backfill with per diem people. The call and volunteer people, as full-time firefighters, our job is to make it as easy as possible for the call members, the volunteer, and they are, yes, they're paid employees. They choose to come and when they want and when they don't. And the issue is, again, we can look at the calls and I can say, okay, over a 3-year period, we had 2,833 calls. The question is, how many individuals are showing up to those still alarms? How do we cover it? How do we provide the services in the best manner possible? My sense is, if we don't continue on this staffing path that we have contemplated and thought of, no different than the capital reserve. It would be like, okay, we're not going to fund the capital reserve for the next 5 years. We could do that. We can save the town a significant amount of money, but to the detriment of the organization, to the detriment of the plan of replacement of radio equipment, which at one point the police department was buying radio equipment on eBay because they couldn't replace what they had. They didn't make it it was antiquated. So I get it, and I am passionate, and I do love this town. And the one thing that I want to leave this department, I want to leave this town a better organization than it was instilled upon me. And I think we are moving in the right direction. I just fear for you, Rich. I fear for the select board. I feel for those that coming up behind us. The fire department that you were affiliated with, and so proud to say I've spent 12 years with the men and women of the New London Fire Department, is a different fire department now. Society has changed. Living locations have changed. It's not our job as leaders to change how people respond or their family dynamics. It's important for us to pivot when those dynamics change in a societal manner. So I hear you loudly and clearly. I hear all of you. And again, if this board wants to put a non-support, I would put it up to the taxpayers and say, if we are tasked with being good stewards of the taxpayer's dollar, what does it look like from the town's perspective? And whether the townspeople would support additional funding.
Okay. What I just remembered as I was sitting here is, don't we have to, the three selectmen vote on each section of the, haven't we done that in the back? Right. So we're not doing that tonight.
Because you haven't landed on it much tonight.
No, we haven't. So I'm going to say, let's keep going the moment. Let's just talk about any other changes that either of you are considering, and then it's the next meeting that we're going to land on things. If we have to have another meeting in between to the next meeting, we do, to hash things. But I just thought of that as I'm staring at this, that we actually have to vote on each section of the budget and approve it or not approve it. So that's my recommendation. Anything else that you're thinking about? Any other sections of the budget that you're thinking about? Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
There was $250,000 put into the Department of Public Works for the cottage building, which is over by the transfer station.
In the capital, that's in the capital improvement plan?
No, that was
Yeah, that's
Coming out of
yes,
capital improvement.
and capital outlay.
Correct, it's a
Yep.
capital outlay expenditure, yeah. So it's,
you know, my concern is that building is basically, it is used as a restroom and for storage. And
did he have that much, 250? Or was that the recommended number that was in Frank's?
The recommended from Frank was over 400.
right.
So he really did have 250?
250 for the improvements to that cottage, yes.
Yeah, and you know, to my mind, if we were to reduce that by $150,000 down to $100,000, that would still provide us with a fair amount of money to do, you know, whatever we would need to do. I've actually toured the building, though. And
I did too.
Unlike,
Really cool building.
yes,
Frank was talking about tearing it down and putting up something ugly. I think it's a really cool building and has a lot of historical value. And they use it now. The bathroom is spotless. And they use it as a lunchroom, so.
right. So, you know, I was hoping we could reduce that by $150,000, which would still give us money to work with. And certainly, if we needed more money down the road, we could always allocate more in the future. But that would provide a fair amount of money for, you know, some renovations that Sam might deem necessary. But I just couldn't see spending $250,000. That building, I think we could, because of its size, we could probably knock the building down and completely rebuild it for less than that. So,
Not according to Frank.
yeah, according to Frank, it would be
Yeah.
$450,000, which
Okay,
was a remarkable number, I thought.
yeah.
Okay, I have something.
Go ahead.
Where are where is the money for legal fees? Is that in our selectmen's discretionary account?
No, it's its own line. It went
It
from
is its own line.
20,500 up to 35,500.
And is it under executive? Where is it?
It's its own line, 4153. I'm looking on the summary sheet.
Oh, okay. All right. And what, I'm sorry, what is it?
It increased from 20,500 to 35,500.
I think that amount should be increased to $50,000. I think that considering all the things that are going on and the fact that we don't have an in-house lawyer, but we're glad we have human resources. So I think that that amount should be increased because I think we're going to be relying a lot on town council.
And we might need it for a pending case in the Superior Court.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, that's one thing. And the other question I have is for Chief Cobb. Is there anywhere in your, am I missing it, in your budget for repairs or replacements of dispatch equipment?
I brought my big paper tonight. Sorry, hold on a second. Yes, we have dispatch radio repair and replacement. So that's a relatively small amount. It's only 2,500. We use that to fix some of the components of the radio. We had an issue with the radio in the bathroom, and they came up and they repaired it. So that's for some of the more kind of day-to-day radio repair and replacement items that we would have. It's not really to repair the whole console, or rather replace the whole console, which is what the capital reserve is for.
Well, and we have money in the capital reserve that if something were significant to break down?
It's for communications equipment. I'd have to read the language and the verbiage of that warrant article, but looks like Lynn is already flipping right to it.
I'm just wondering if we should increase that line item amount.
In order to postpone the
I don't know, in order to postpone the capital reserve addition?
Right, yeah.
Okay. I don't know that that's necessarily the same thing. I think we're talking about hardware that we replace on the radio console or with the radio components more so than the actual console itself.
Would that fall under the line equipment maintenance and repair that you have $15,000 in?
No, those are some other things like last year, or yeah, I think it was last year, yeah. We had to replace a bunch of batteries and the cabinet up on Kearsarge for some of the equipment and repairing. Out of that line item also comes our maintenance agreement, I believe, with the company that we use with Beltronics. So that's more, they're a little bit different. I don't know that increasing those two things would extend the life necessarily of the consoles, but again, that's something that I can get a more analytical view of from Beltronics.
I want to make it clear that promoting a dispatch study is not so that we eliminate dispatch, but we look at it holistically and say, okay, these are things we can do to make it even better.
Sure.
So
Yep.
I really feel, and by looking at it, having a company actually look at it, are there ways that we can increase fees legitimately to towns that are supporting us with it?
Right.
Or subsidizing our department?
Exactly,
That's
yes.
the way
Yeah,
I look.
without pricing our customers out of the market, so to speak.
Exactly. So that was, that's my goal in having the
Yes.
study done.
And you might recall, it was a couple of years ago that the select board, that the townspeople voted to make the select board agents to expend that communications capital reserve, because once it was created in 2015, I believe, they weren't named as agents to expend, and it kept building over the years, but we couldn't touch the money yet. So it was a good idea to have that. And now we have taken money out of that that has been perhaps above and beyond what we had planned for in our operating budget. But again, I'm very careful to use that for those reasons, in line with what the warrant article, the intent of the warrant article was.
True, there's a balance of 250,000 in.
All right, that's good. Thank
Yep.
you.
Yep.
Okay. Okay. Anything else for the moment? Okay. I think that's all I got, except for maybe we did get the request in from the Lake Sunapee Region Chamber of Commerce. She wrote us a letter. She didn't come to our Jamboree meeting. She's asking for an increase of $15,000. Prior, they had always gotten $12,500. They serve a lot of towns in our community, and New London is the only one that they ask money of. And she gives numbers saying that, a lot of their membership are New London, their office is in New London. They gave some assistance to Sunapee last year when they were struggling to staff their visitor center because of their default budget. I don't know. What are you all thinking? Leave it at 12.5 or honor the request for the increase to 15? Any thoughts? Janet, do you have an opinion?
I think that they are a valuable resource for this town. And the fact that they are located here, I think it's a legitimate request.
Okay. Rich?
I would tend to agree with that, but I would think we should also perhaps respond that we're willing to do that this year, but that we expect reasonably so that they should be asking for assistance from the other towns that they serve as well. I think it's just, again, it's an example, unfortunately, of where I think some of our neighbors expect that New London can foot the bill for all of these things.
Yeah.
Yep.
It is also my understanding that this is the third or fourth year that request has been made, and it has not come to fruition of them asking other towns to contribute.
Oh.
When you say it hasn't, you mean they've asked and been turned down?
No.
Or they have not requested?
They have not requested.
I say we stick with the 12.5.
I think that's reasonable. If
Yeah,
we've
a
requested and
request.
nothing's
Yeah.
happened,
I didn't realize that.
I didn't either.
I think it was 2 years ago, they came in asking for 15, and Bill Helm was the one that had said, you need to go back to Sunapee, you need to ask them to contribute towards this, and I think we should keep it at the 12.5. So I think that's where that went.
Okay.
And I did ask her if they have been soliciting funds from other towns, and she said no, they have not.
Okay. Because we heard from all these other agencies during the Jamboree that serve lots of other towns and get contributions from all the other towns. So I don't understand why they wouldn't request, but she's welcome to come to our next meeting and explain that. Absolutely.
Sounds
Give
good.
her the floor. Okay. All right. We've got a big town administrator report. So the next meeting, we will try to vote on this budget and try to finalize it. Okay, if there's a sense of urgency that you need the three of us to meet before our next meeting, just let us know.
Yeah, I'll talk to Charlie. They are several weeks ahead of prior year schedule, so they begin their meetings with department heads next week.
Okay.
And so they will be without a budget to do so. But let me talk to Charlie and see, but they might need to adjust their meetings and push those out a bit, or at least the ones that are beginning before November 6th.
Okay.
We'll get that done. Okay.
All right, you're up, Ashley.
Okay. DPW RFP update. We did receive 4 responses to our RFP. The 3 of you have copies of those that you can read at your leisure when you would like. Sam, Adam, and I have met, gone through a scorecard. We have narrowed it down to 2 that we would like to move forward in the process. The next step would be an interview with 2 of the engineering and design firms, LaValle Brenzinger and Wyman Lamphere. So we would like 1 select board member to be a part of those interviews. So whoever would like to volunteer to be a part of those would be fantastic. And it would be with Adam, Sam, myself, and and one of you.
Sure.
Great, thank you. And Sam and Adam and I have written you a memo that you all have printed out, and it is also online as well for our community members. Town meeting date. So there has been an interest in us continuing to use the Hogan Center, Colby Sawyer, moving forward. That would mean that we would need to split out the voting day of March 10th. I think it's Tuesday, March 10th or 11th this year. Typically, town meeting happens the following night, that Wednesday night. We would be looking at moving that out to the following week. I have connected with Michael Todd. We are able to do that. And Colby Sawyer is available that following both Tuesday and Wednesday, which is March 17th and 18th, I do believe.
Because they're on break?
That is because of their winter break. So Tuesday the 17th or Wednesday the 18th of March at night. And so I think it's up to the three of you. If you would like to, one, move it from the SAU, and two, if you do, if it would be the 17th or the 18th.
Yeah, I think Colby worked well.
It did.
Yeah, and it's my understanding that it costs about the same to use it, to do it there. Am I correct, Lynn, on that one?
Yes. March 10th and March 18th it would be.
Yeah.
Yes, it does.
So the 17th is Tuesday, the 18th is a Wednesday, so either Tuesday or Wednesday of that following week after we vote here in Whipple at the polls.
And Michael says there's no issue with that. No,
Correct.
According to the RSA or whatever, we can still do.
We can move the business portion of the town meeting.
The way I understand it, there might be years when the spring break does fall in the week when we're supposed to. So this could be changing every year.
Good.
I'm okay with it.
Okay. Which one?
For the March 10th, it would be March 10th and then waiting the week.
Right, yeah. No, I'm good with that.
Because I think people really liked going up to Hogan.
Yep.
Okay.
So 17th or 18th, Tuesday or Wednesday?
18th.
Wednesday the 18th?
Wednesday, yeah,
Okay.
leave the town meeting on the day of the week, I think, that we usually have it. And
So on Tuesday.
So that hopefully causes leak. We're going to be doing lots of communicating anyway this year on our warrant articles and everything. As
We are.
just heard from them.
I just have a note in here about warrant articles. I think we had a department heads meeting a few weeks ago where we discussed some that we've sort of heard about tangentially, but if you have heard of any or have any in mind, to take some time, think about it. I know that we have one around, we've all talked about a potential to have one where the select board has the authority to sell town-owned property that has been taken by tax lien. So I think that we'll probably put in there. But if there are any others floating in your brains,
There will be creating the town clock capital reserve fund, that will be one. And then creating the police communications facility capital reserve fund. Those two off the top of my head. Okay.
okay, well, if anything else comes to mind, let me know. Selectmen Winter Gathering, the past few years, you have had those at Wheeler Center up at Colby Sawyer in early December. I propose that we move that to end of January, beginning of February, and use that meeting as an opportunity to start to educate people on what they can expect to see on the ballot here at the polls, and also warrant articles at the business portion of the meeting.
Quick question.
Yeah.
We usually have a public hearing anyway to go over all of the warrant articles. What's usually the timing for that? Not to discount the idea of a winter gathering, because I think it's a good idea as well. and gives us more opportunity for people to show up so that we can go through all of the warrant articles. So go ahead, Lynn. When is that? I know that's a statutory.
The only reason I remember the date that we always try to land on is because it's always around Valentine's Day. So it would be like the 11th or something. But John Wilson was adamant not on Valentine's Day. So we've always done it then, and that's what is in the recommendations from the DRA. I think that the budget committee has been kind of looking at February 4th to do it.
Yeah.
Which obviously backs up all the noticing and stuff, but it's right around there.
Yes.
So maybe middle of January for the selectmen's? So it's not too close to that, so people don't get saturated with.
Yeah, I think we'll just need to have everything really ticked and tied early. Mid-January. Any other thoughts on that? Okay. Okay. Just an FYI that the annual sticker check at the transportation will be taking place at some point between now and the end of the year. Will and I will be there 2 days. Okay. Obviously not going to tell you those dates, but we will be there, and they will happen between now and the end of the year. Traffic study at Crockett's Corner and Seamans Road and Route 11 intersections. Chief Lyon, Chief Cobb, and I will be hosting the Department of Transportation here in early December. They actually proactively reached out to schedule, so that is in the works. And we would love to open that up to one select board member if someone would like to attend. It sounds like it's going to be a half-day affair. We'll probably meet here in Whipple for a little bit of time, go down to both locations, and then come back here. And it will be us and several members, several employees from DOT and other agencies, state agencies.
I'm okay with that. I'm traveling the first week of December, so
Okay.
If it's the week after that, I'm fine with that.
Okay. Did you have an interest in that? If it happens to be the first week of December, would you like to attend? Okay. Noted. Okay. I don't know, you had a little glimmer in your eye, so. Municipal lot behind the chamber information booth down the street here. Two groups have come up with some ideas on how that lot might or could potentially turn into a park of some kind. They are separate groups, and this all came about last week. But I think the first step in any of this, I did meet with one group earlier this week. I'm meeting with the other group tomorrow. The first step in this is the 3 select board members giving it some thought on what would you like to see happen with that lot of land, if anything at all.
So where's the lot located?
Where the information booth is, that plot of land just right behind it. Yeah. Next to Woodcrest.
Well, I've been part of the conversations with the Bicycle and Pedestrian Committee, and they've been talking a lot about it, turning it into an area like a pocket park where there would be information about walking trails around town, walking trails. So I am supportive of one or both of the groups working on that project. The one thing that came up last week that I wasn't aware of is that there is a large tree that's planted on that lot that was planted in memory of Tara Linehan. So before we do anything, we should speak with the Linehans.
Yeah.
And the tree is in tough shape, I heard too, but.
I think the other thing to keep in mind is if there is a desire to move forward with doing something with that land, whichever organization moves forward, they're there just to do that work, and then they wipe their hands clean, and that becomes the responsibility of the town for maintenance.
Yeah.
I just am mindful of the fact that when that area was considered for adding on to or making the police station there, that the town was very much opposed to that. They wanted to keep it green space. So whatever any group comes forward with, I think it needs to be very minimal, and not changing what it looks like.
Okay.
Yeah, bike and ped are pretty much just talking about a bench and some plants, and then some sort of a kiosk that somebody could like use a QR code and see a map of trails, something like that.
Something very simple.
Yeah.
Okay. So it sounds like there is interest to explore
Yeah.
potentially doing something with that land. Okay.
I think so.
Okay. That's all I have.
Awesome. Okay. Do we want to do committee meetings and reports? Does anybody have any, or do we want to put it to the next? All I had was the coalition community update.
Very briefly, the planning board met and we had a tree cutting boundary line adjustment. We approved the capital improvement plan, which you all have seen. And they went over what was going to happen with the Housing Commission. And then the Board of Fire Wards met on the 20th, and you pretty much heard everything that was brought up tonight with regard to them. It was interesting to note that with regard to the Halloween event on the 26th, that 20 firefighters have volunteered to help with that event, which I think is very remarkable and wonderful. So there it is.
Okay, yeah, just quickly, Ashley and I dialed into the Coalition Communities 2.0 meeting. They're continuing with their lobbying work following both court decisions coming out. Good news is that our attorney's fees are being decreased by 55%. Actually, I have that number here if you put it in the budget. And they're just plugging along, staying, it's good. They monitor that for us. And for $2,900, which is the attorney's fees, I think it's a pretty good investment for us to make to possibly save $1.4 million for the taxpayers. So we'll just keep monitoring those meetings. You're welcome to join anytime you want if you're interested. Okay, that's all I got. Meeting minutes. Would we like to approve the meeting minutes of October 2nd and October 8th?
Sure.
So moved.
Yep.
All in favor? Aye. Okay. See everybody at Haunted Happenings on Sunday, October 26th, between 4 to 6. Is that it? 4? Yep. Planning Board, Tuesday, October 28th. The town clerk and tax collector's offices will be closed October 29th through the 31st. Is that right? Okay, there's another 20 there. I don't know what that means. That must be a typo. Oh, 2025, got it, it got cut off. Okay, Energy Committee, Wednesday, November 5th, 5:30. Board of Selectmen, next meeting is November 6th. Conservation Commission, November 19th. Board of Selectmen, again on the 20th. All right, that is it, and we will be signing stuff, apparently. There's no non-public? Good, awesome.